The following program is intended for mature audiences.
People of Earth, attention. People of Earth, attention. This is a voice speaking to you from thousands of miles beyond your planet. You're listening to the Martian Revelation. Strap inside.
Look, I love Gary. He's fantastic.
Good job you're doing. Boy, what a good reputation. Thank you very much, Gary.
Go to www.thefacesofmars.com. That's www.thefacesofmars.com.
According to a new report in the New York Times, the U.S. government may have physical evidence of, and we're quoting, off-world vehicles not made on this Earth.
And as I say, in the words of the world's greatest detective, how often have I said to you that when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
Surely the days of the great Martian revelation are upon us.
Which nobody has ever seen before. When China looks at woke and they see the biggest problem we have is Dr. Seuss. In the meantime, they're building factories and trying to kill us in so many different ways. They laugh at us. They think we're so... Frankly, they think our country is stupid.
SARS-CoV-1 clearly originated in China, and we were fortunate to escape a major pandemic. So we really had to learn a lot more about the viruses that were there, about whether or not people were getting infected with bad viruses. So in a very minor collaboration, as part of a subcontract of a grant, we had a collaboration with some Chinese scientists. We had a collaboration with some Chinese Frankly,
they think our country is stupid. In the meantime, they're building factories and trying to kill us in so many different ways.
And what he conflated that is that therefore we were involved in creating the virus, which is the most ridiculous, majestic leap I've ever heard of.
Do not risk incurring the anger of the Chinese government because they are ruthless.
There was nothing disruptive about that. It was only about saying China is one of the freest societies in the world.
Joe Biden.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree.
You got the vaccination?
Yeah.
Are you okay? I mean, you seem no, it works. Or or the mom and dad, or the neighbor, or when you go to church, or when you're. No, I really mean it. There are trusted interlocutors. Think of the people. If your kid wanted to find out whether or not there's a man on the moon or whatever, something, or, whether those aliens are here or not.
Shut the fuck up, okay? Shut the fuck up.
Come on, man.
He's shaking hands with the air. He's walking around somewhat bewildered. I'd say it's no good. And taking orders from the Easter Bunny. You saw that one? No. Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats have turned calm into chaos, competence into incompetence, and stability into anarchy, prosperity into poverty, and security into a catastrophe. You look at...
Wow. This is a classic example of white privilege, and you both have it.
What's that?
Anyone want to fill them in?
Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. So white privilege is when white people, particularly men, automatically assume they can take whatever they want. And they never have to worry about getting stopped by the police. And they have the inside track for any job
I've got this one, Aisha. They have the inside track for any job they want.
Exactly, Gage. Thank you for that. That's white privilege.
Whoa. And we have that?
You sure do.
I see.
Whoa. I never realized this stuff.
Yeah. You've really opened up my eyes.
Well, I'm glad we've been able to enlighten you. The real question is, do you think you'll be acting differently from now on?
I guarantee it.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
Step aside, please. We have white privilege.
Yeah, check it out. Don't worry, it's okay. automatically assume we can take what we want, and we don't have to worry about the police. It's okay, you didn't know. We didn't either. Good stuff now.
This is what we were taught, sir.
Yeah, we're subverting existing paradigms.
This rules. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad we went to college.
Yeah, it's like, now I have the skills for today's workplace.
Well, let's see. What should we take next? Let's take that car.
But that's a police car.
Beavis, you dumbass. Didn't you hear? We don't have to worry about getting stopped by the police.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Beavis, let's tear ass.
That
was cool.
Don't move!
Sir, maybe you didn't know, but we have white privilege.
Get your hands where I can see them!
I think the problem is you're just uneducated.
Yeah, we're gonna get jobs on Wall Street.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
I want to do what's right, and they are destroying our country.
Those motherfuckers!
I'm going to tell you a story about a fight, about our lives. This could be your story.
Ain't that the truth? With a new revolution. More ways than one. Sorry to say, pun intended. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all you ETs out there in the bite waves of the internet, and wherever you're at down through time monitoring this show. I'm Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Martian Revelation that is upon you all again now. Welcome to the Bazaar. And today is September 3rd of 2022, or the 4th, depending upon your time zone, as this airs through time. And you're listening to this broadcast through the Martian Revelation Show YouTube stream live at
www.thefacesofmars.com. That's www.thefacesofmars.com.
That's right, which everyone knows your defense for the war which we all fight against those evil dark missioners who are all leading you away from the light and the truth and manipulating you all instead to help you open your wallets and your pocketbooks to only join their dark side and special clubs and their special subscriptions that only allows them more power to continue to mislead you all and to steal you all away from the truth that they themselves not wish to face or even admit to. Hell, let alone even talk about.
Yeah, UFO Diaries. Faces on Mars. Cover-up controversy. Down through time. Huge conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy.
Okay.
That's right, but the Martian Revelation is, however, 100% listener supported, with no special clubs or any special subscriptions to join. So if you're a listener, please help support the Martian Revelation Show again, which is your only defense for that war which we all fight against those evil dark missioners. And we're trying to work with the goal each week to bring you the bizarre truth, one show at a time. So please share the facesofmars.com link. And I must also ask you, although, that you please donate to the show with anything that you can afford by clicking on that big red, white, and blue American donate button while you can at the top of the show page to allow it to continue being here for you down through time. Because free speech is what we're about. But even though everyone here knows that freedom comes with a price, but I'm not asking for your blood, not yet anyway, for this new revolution. But I will just say this: freedom isn't free, and your donation support helps because of you, the listener, which makes the Martian Revelation possible to be brought to you all back through time. Crazy! So your listenership and your donation support actually counts, and it helps us all to not only fight, but to win against those evil dark missioners. As well as to secure a future which we all could literally make the Martian Revelation our reality by what you say, by making our fate. Just remember also that if you're listening to this Martian Revelation show, then know this, that you are the resistance down through time. So with that being said, we got a great show tonight. We're going to have return guest Dr. John Brandenburg on with us to discuss his new book, The War of the Singularity. The human race is canceled. Yes, indeed. This is the continuing saga for the Morning Star Pass UFO cover-up trilogy series. So be sure that everyone get that book. This all needs to be turned into a major motion pictures. So other than that, there's a lot of news out there, but I think the main news to be focusing on, we're going to get into for this hour. Then when we're done with that, we'll go to a break and, of course, bring on and then introduce Dr. John Brandenburg and bring him on. So now let's get into this news. So our first article is for September 1st. MIT's MOXIE experiment reliably produces oxygen on Mars. And that's very important. But on the red and dusty surface of Mars, nearly 100 million miles from Earth, an instrument the size of a lunchbox is proving that it could reliably do the work of a small tree. The MIT-led Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, or MOXIE, I appreciate that, has been successfully making oxygen from the red planet's carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere since April of 2021, about 2 months after it touched down on the Martian surface as part of NASA's Perseverance Forever rover and Mars 2020 mission. In a study published in the Journal of Science Advances, researchers report that by the end of 2021, Moxie was able to produce oxygen on 7 experimental runs in a variety of atmospheric conditions, including during the day and night and through different Martian seasons. In each run, the instrument reached its target of producing 6 grams of oxygen per hour, about the rate of a modest tree on Earth. That's pretty interesting. Gonna need a shitload of them up there for as we progress and colonize Mars, but researchers envision that a scaled-up version of Moxie could be sent to Mars ahead of a human mission to continuously produce oxygen at the rate of several hundred trees. At that capacity, the system should generate enough oxygen to both sustain humans once they arrive and also fuel a rocket for returning astronauts back to Earth. So far, Moxie's steady output is a promising first step toward that goal. We have learned a tremendous amount that will inform future systems at a larger scale, says Michael Hecht, principal investigator of the Moxie mission at MIT's Haystack Observatory. And Moxie's oxygen production on Mars also represents the first demonstration of in situ resource utilization, which is the idea of harvesting and using a planet's materials, in this case carbon dioxide on Mars, to make resources such as oxygen that would otherwise have to be transported from Earth. This is the first demonstration of actually using resources on the surface of another planetary body and transforming them chemically into something that would be useful for a human mission, or a human continuing presence, I'll add, says Moxie Deputy Principal Investigator Jeffrey Hoffman, a professor of the practice in MIT's Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics. It's historic in that sense. Hoffman and Hecht's MIT co-authors include Moxie team members Jason Suhu, Andrew Liu, Eric Hinterman, Maya Nasser, along with other collaborators from multiple institutions, including NASA's JPL, which managed Moxie's development, flight software, packaging, and testing prior to launch. The current version of Moxie is small by design in order to fit aboard the Perseverance Forever rover and is built to run for short periods, starting up and shutting down with each run, depending on the rover's exploration schedule and mission responsibilities. In contrast, the full-scale oxygen factory would include larger units that would ideally run continuously. Despite the necessary compromises in Moxie's current design, the instrument has shown that it can reliably and efficiently convert Mars's atmosphere into pure oxygen. It does so by first drawing the Martian air in through a filter that cleans it of its contaminants. The air is then pressurized and sent through the solid oxide electrolyzer, or SOXY, an instrument developed and built by Oxyon Energy that electrochemically splits the carbon dioxide-rich air into oxygen ions and carbon monoxide. The oxygen ions are then isolated and recombined to form breathable molecular oxygen, or O2, which Moxie then measures for quantity and purity before releasing it harmlessly back into the air, along with the carbon monoxide and other atmospheric gases. Since the rover's landing in February of 2021, Moxie engineers have started up the instrument 7 times throughout the Martian year, each time taking a few hours to warm up, then another hour to make oxygen before powering back down. Each run was scheduled for a different time of day or night, and in different seasons to see whether Moxie could accommodate shifts in the planet's atmospheric conditions. I guess it's pretty steady, but the atmosphere of Mars is far more variable than Earth, Hoffman notes. The density of the air can vary by a factor or 2 through the year, and the temperature can vary by 100 degrees. One objective is to show that we can run in all seasons. So far, Moxie has shown that it can make oxygen at almost any time of the Martian day and year. The only thing that we have not demonstrated is running at dawn or dusk when the temperature is changing substantially, Hecht says. We do have an ace up our sleeve that will let us do that, and once we test that in the lab, we can reach that last milestone to show that we can really run any time. As Moxie continues to churn out oxygen on Mars, engineers plan to push its capacity and increase its production, particularly in the Martian spring when atmospheric density and carbon dioxide levels are high. The next run coming up will be during the highest density of the year, and we just want to make as much oxygen as we can, Hecht says, so we'll set everything as high as we dare and let it run as long as we can. They will also monitor the systems for signs of wear and tear, as Moxie is just one experiment among several aboard the Perseverance Forever rover. It cannot run continuously as a full-scale system would. Instead, the instrument must start up and shut down with each run, a thermal stress that can degrade the system over time. If Moxley can operate successfully despite repeatedly turning on and off, this would suggest that a full-scale system designed to run continuously could do just that for thousands of hours. Indeed, in even bigger machines, we can terraform the planet that way, churning out much oxygen. But this, I don't know how long that would take or much difference to the other concepts to do just that. But anyway, to support a human mission to Mars, we have to bring a lot of stuff there from Earth, like computers, spacesuits, and habitats, Hoffman says. But dumb old oxygen, if you can make it there, go for it. You're way ahead of the game. Especially if you send missions there ahead of time, Elon Musk, with these capabilities on board, generating those ships and tanks of oxygen. So by the time you guys get there, you could utilize it and then not be threatened before the new batches are made after your presence is felt there. But that's just my opinion. So as everyone also is obviously waiting to hear about, is the SLS, the Space Launch System on the Cape. As released earlier today, NASA postpones rocket launch to the moon again after fuel leak. NASA on Saturday scrapped a second attempt to get its new 30-story rocket off the ground and send its uncrewed test capsule toward the moon after engineers detected a fuel leak. With millions around the globe and hundreds of thousands on nearby beaches waiting for the historic launch of the massive launch system, the SLS, a leak near the base of the rocket was found as ultra-cold liquid hydrogen was being pumped in. The launch director waved off today's Artemis 1 launch, NASA said in a statement. Multiple troubleshooting efforts to address the area of the leak did not fix the issue. Though the area around the launch site was closed to the public, an estimated 400,000 people had gathered nearby to see and to hear the most powerful vehicle that NASA has ever launched climb into space. The initial launch attempt on Monday was also halted after engineers had detected a fuel leak and a sensor showed that one of the rocket's four main engines was too hot. Early Saturday, launch director Charlie Blackwell Thompson had given the go-ahead to start filling the rocket's tanks with cryogenic fuel. About 3 million liters of ultra-cold liquid hydrogen and oxygen were due to be pumped into the spacecraft, but the process soon hit problems. No new date for another try was immediately announced. You surprised? But after the latest delay, there are backup opportunities on Monday or Tuesday. After that, the next launch window will not be until September 19th due to the moon's position. The purpose of Artemis 1 mission is to verify that the Orion capsule, which sits atop the SLS rocket, is safe to carry astronauts in the future. Mannequins equipped with sensors are standing in for astronauts on the mission and will record acceleration, vibration, and radiation levels. And that's the most important one, the radiation levels. Again, the Van Allen belts, right? Supposedly where they went through in the past, but somehow survived, passing through 1,000 miles and then another 30,000 miles. Okay? If that craft is traveling at 25,000 miles an hour, it's going to take them over an hour to get through the 30,000. Now, with all the radiation, how did they survive? Crazy! But that is very important for those tests, regardless of all the conspiratorial bents and everything wrong, what we've been told in the past and what we're trying to build now, as this race to space is well underway. Which brings me up to this, for everyone that's so excited for the SLS, the way over budgeted product of past technologies not being put forth to full use of the imagination and creation of what needs to be done, as which was public 3 days ago, as SpaceX ignites multiple engines on Starship Super Heavy booster for the first time. The static fire test was part of the ongoing prep work for the first ever Starship orbital test flight. That's the one! The big effing rockets! With some big effing engines! You guys really want to hear the biggest thing, rocket and engine that NASA ever produced? This one, Elon Musk, SpaceX big effing rockets, will surpass that. And SpaceX is the version and the model and the vision and the big effing balls that we need to do this endeavor, to get our ass in the space race, and to do it must be done on the moon as well as Mars, as well as the solar system. But anyway, I'm ranting. SpaceX just lit up multiple engines on its Starship Super Heavy booster for the first time ever. The company is gearing up for the first orbital test flight of the Starship. Big effing rocket! A fully reusable vehicle that consists of a huge booster called Super Heavy and a 165-foot tall spacecraft known as the Starship. Both elements will be powered by SpaceX's next-gen Raptor engine, 33 of them for Super Heavy and 6 for Starship. The ongoing prep work includes static fire tests of Booster 7 and Ship 24, the two prototypes that will conduct the coming test flight. In a static fire, one or more engines are ignited while the vehicle remains anchored to the ground. Earlier this month, SpaceX performed 2 static fires with Booster 7 on the orbital launch mount at Starbase, its South Texas facility in Boca Chica. Both of those tests involved just one of the vehicle's Raptor engines. And on August 31st, the company upped the ante, lighting up 3 Raptors on the prototype Super Heavy for about 5 seconds at 2:03 p.m. Eastern Time. That seemed to be the plan. Anyway, NASA spaceflight live streamed the test, and its footage suggests that only 2 engines may have fully lit up, with the third perhaps aborting. Whether or not the third Raptor joined the party, however, it was still the first multi-engine Super Heavy static fire that SpaceX has performed. Rocket Ranch Boca Chica also captured imagery of that test, which they used in this story. Okay, Starship Prototype 24 has conducted such a test before. It lit up 2 of its 6 Raptors during a static fire on August 9th. The static fire testing will likely continue to spool up from here, with SpaceX adding more and more engines into the mix. The drama will continue to grow, as will the spectacle. Watching Booster 7 ignite all 33 of its Raptors for the first time will be quite an event. There's no firm timetable for any of this, but we should expect brisk movement. And SpaceX tends to move fast, and the company apparently aims to launch Booster 7 and Ship 24 in the next few months. So tell me who's really moving ahead, especially again from 3 days ago as NASA awards SpaceX $1.4 billion for 5 more astronaut missions. Wow. I wonder how Boeing's taking all this. Appreciation and progress by SpaceX. But anyway, we might get into that soon. But SpaceX is the only private company ever to launch astronauts to the International Space Station. Not NASA. SpaceX will be able to outfit 5 more astronaut crews in its iconic white flight suits. NASA has just tasked SpaceX with carrying out 5 additional astronaut missions to the International Space Station under a new $1.4 billion deal, which modifies an existing agreement between the 2 organizations. The deal, which will employ SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft and Falcon 9 rockets, allows NASA to maintain an uninterrupted U.S. capability for human access to the space station until 2030, NASA officials said in an update on August 31st. The pact will cover missions Crew 10 through Crew 14, representing approximately 20 spacecraft seats overall. SpaceX's Crew 5 is expected to launch in early October, and Crew 4 is at the space station right now. And again, while NASA is banking on Boeing's Starliner capsule, the SLS, flying people to space relatively soon, for now SpaceX is the only company certified to fly operational crewed missions for the agency. Boeing again left behind. But SpaceX also received a trio of astronaut flights from NASA in December as part of a sole source modification to its Commercial Crew Transportation Capabilities, or the CCTCAP, contract, which was first awarded in 2014. SpaceX's crew transportation system is the only one certified to meet NASA's safety requirements to transport crew to the space station and to maintain the agency's obligation to its international partners. Its international partners in the needed time frame, agency officials said at the time. Look, I'm for international cooperation, but there's too much collaboration and cooperation that's going on out there with people who are not out for America's best interests, nor about America first. Terrorists! Bullshit. But SpaceX's CCTCAP deal is now worth a total of $4.9 billion, NASA officials said in the update on the 31st of August. NASA plans on running astronaut missions to the ISS until at least 2030. The agency was just approved by illegitimate President Potato Joe Biden traitor to extend its participation in the orbiting complex by 6 more years past 2024. Major space station partner Russia, however, intends to withdraw from the ISS after 2024 to build a Russian-operated space station. However, that new station likely won't be ready until at least 2028, experts say. And at this point, you can't really blame them. But there is no word yet on how NASA and any remaining ISS partners would fill in operational gaps left by the Russians, like boosting the space station periodically to keep it at the proper altitude above Earth. Well, you should have thought of those things before you started fucking things up. And it's funny, again, about Boeing, as NASA is paying SpaceX half of Boeing's price to launch astronauts. You see how it would be possible Elon Musk and his big effing balls and his big effing rockets are pushing ahead and utilizing what is here on Earth to take advantage of for that entrepreneur to act on behalf of we the people to make this happen. Boeing's lagging behind. Again, NASA's paying Boeing double than what is paying SpaceX for the same service that, I repeat, they are not getting. But NASA will be paying Boeing twice as much for each Starliner seat to the International Space Station than it is paying SpaceX for the equivalent Crew Dragon tickets, Ars Technica reports, and a price differential that's becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile as Boeing is yet to successfully launch a single astronaut into orbit.
You dumbass.
This week, the space agency confirmed that it has awarded SpaceX with 5 additional crewed missions, which we just went over, to the space station, bringing the total up to 14 through 2030, at which point the station is scheduled to finally be retired. Boeing was awarded contracts for 6 crewed flights throughout the same time period, but is still getting almost as much funding from NASA as SpaceX. That means, according to our calculations, that NASA will spend $183 million for each seat on board a Boeing Starliner across all planned missions, while it's paying SpaceX just $88 million per seat, which is less than half. So given Boeing's plagued development of its Starliner, the capsule failed to reach a stable orbit during its first catastrophic test flight back in December of 2019.
You dumbass.
It seems like an awful steep price that's becoming harder to justify with every day, as well as with every delay. The company has made little progress since then, limping into orbit during its second attempt in May while suffering engine failures along the way, but with no crew on board. The first crewed Starliner mission is tentatively scheduled for early next year, with NASA assigning 2 brave souls
You dumbass.
to take the capsule for its first inaugural crewed test ride back in June. But in the longer term, Boeing may also struggle finding available rockets to launch the spacecraft, with the United Launch Alliance, ULA, retiring its Atlas V rocket after 6 Starliner missions, Ars reports. That means the company have to turn to the ULA's other unproven Vulcan rocket, Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, or even SpaceX for a rocket ride. So who's leading ahead here? Who should take the National Space Agency of we the people, leading us into space? NASA?
You dumbass.
Or Elon Musk with his big effing rockets and big effing balls? But since NASA's commercial crew program is a fixed price, Boeing will likely have to shoulder the cost for any incurred budget overruns. In fact, sources told ours that Starliner program has already proven to be a major money drain for the company. It's a money pit, and it's dangerous. They're the ones lagging behind and not thinking too far ahead in what ability and capability could really bring us. But in short, Boeing is far behind SpaceX's immense progress at this point, which means that NASA will likely have even more difficulties justifying the billions of dollars that it's spending to keep both companies in the running.
You dumbass.
Their days are past. Cut them off. Put it all into Elon Musk and SpaceX. That's what I say. So let's go on to the next one, as SpaceX could launch 100 missions in 2023, Elon Musk states, from 3 days ago. The company has launched 39 times already in 2022. The SpaceX may ramp up its already impressive launch cadence considerably next year. SpaceX has launched 39 orbital missions so far in 2022, about 1 every 6 days. The ever-growing tally has shattered the company's previous record for most liftoffs in a year, 31, which was set in 2021. But SpaceX will apparently aim even higher in 2023. Ars Technica's Eric Berger had tweeted Wednesday that he's heard that the company intends to launch 100 missions next year, a rumor that SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk had soon confirmed. Yeah, aiming up for 100 flights next year, the billionaire entrepreneur has said in a Wednesday tweet of his own. Many of those upcoming missions will likely launch big batches of satellites for SpaceX's Starlink broadband constellation. After all, 25 of SpaceX's 39 launches this year have been dedicated Starlink flights, which loft about 50 satellites into orbit at a time. All Starlink missions to date have launched atop SpaceX's workhorse of Falcon 9 rocket, but that could change next year. The company is working to get its next-generation spaceflight system, a huge rocket spaceship combo known as a Starship, big effing rocket, up and running in the near future. Indeed, the first Starship orbital test flight may lift off in the next few months from Starbase at SpaceX's South Texas facility in Boca Chica. The company has recently started conducting static fire engine tests, which we went over with Booster 7 and ship number 24, the two Starship prototype elements that will launch on that mission. Starship is crucial to SpaceX's plans. The fully reusable vehicle will be cost-effective, though, to make Mars colonization economically feasible, Elon Musk stated, and SpaceX will rely on the giant rocket to loft its big and bulky Starlink version 2 satellites, which will be capable of beaming service directly to smartphones. So tell me how he's not moving ahead and how we the people should not be behind him. Now, however, I want to read this article from August 24th because according to NASA, SpaceX only has to prove that it could land astronauts on the moon, not bring them home again. But it's going to be a skeleton because it just has to land. It does not have to take back off. But NASA says SpaceX is sending only a skeleton version of its lunar Starship spacecraft to the surface of the moon during an upcoming uncrewed test mission. It'll be so stripped down, in fact, that it won't even be required to demonstrate that it could take back off after landing. For the uncrewed demo, the goal is to have a safe landing, said Lisa Watson-Morgan, manager of NASA's Human Landing System, the HLS program. Again, that didn't even get off the ground again, during a presentation, again, back from August. But the uncrewed demo is not necessarily planned to be the same Starship that you see for the crewed demo, she added. It's going to be a skeleton because it just has to land. It does not have to take back off. Perhaps anticipating that her comments may stir some debate over whether SpaceX will actually be required to return astronauts safely, Watson-Morgan added that clearly we want it to take off from the moon, but the requirements are for it to land. We don't tell them to do anything with it, Logan Kennedy, HLS service lead at NASA, said at the event, referring to the Starship spacecraft once astronauts are returned from the moon's surface. That's going to be up to SpaceX. Back in 2021, NASA's HLS program chose SpaceX as its private partner for developing a spacecraft capable of returning astronauts to the moon for its Artemis program. Despite plenty of drama surrounding NASA's decision, SpaceX has emerged as the space agency's de facto collaborator, receiving billions in funding to turn its super heavy lift Starship into a lunar lander. But Artemis 3, NASA's first planned crewed mission to the lunar surface, is still a long way out. And while SpaceX has made strides in developing Starship, it is yet to successfully launch it or its accompanying super heavy booster to orbit. We're all waiting on that now, right? But during the upcoming uncrewed mission, NASA and SpaceX may choose to take along potentially one payload, according to Watson-Morgan, landing near the south pole of the moon. I wonder what that payload would be. But Artemis 3, however, will be far more involved. For one, there's the size of the Starship itself. Astronauts will have a very unique perspective once the 165-foot tall spacecraft lands upright on the surface. That also means getting in and out will prove a lot more difficult than simply climbing up and down the ladder attached to the outside of Apollo-era lunar landers. SpaceX has been working on an exterior elevator to take crews down to the surface. The company already built a full-scale mock-up of the system, allowing astronauts to test it out while wearing simulated spacesuits, Space News reported that Kennedy said. It's a very tall lander, Watson Morgan said during this week's meeting. It doesn't look like the traditional landers that we've seen all in the past, so it may be hard to reconcile that mentally. But NASA and the SpaceX have their work cut out for them. For instance, SpaceX is still figuring out how many Starship spacecraft it will have to launch into orbit to actually get to the moon. The company is envisioning the spacecraft to also serve as a mobile fuel tank, providing a place for other Starship to refuel in orbit before headed to Moontown. Last year, SpaceX Elon Musk CEO wagered a guess, estimating that it will take a max of 8 Starships worth of fuel to get to the moon and back. And then there's still the considerable task of safely getting humans down to the surface, back into the spacecraft, and safely launch back into orbit, a gargantuan task in and of itself. But here's the problem, published earlier today, in this next article, that the Artemis 1 mission marks the start of a new space race to mine the moon. See, they suddenly come out and tell you that the space race is on, and I've only been claiming it since, 2001, at the start of the Martian Revelation show? But NASA plans to launch the Artemis 1 lunar mission this Saturday, which it did, and it failed due to a leak. But anyway, after a first attempt earlier in the week was canceled at the last minute due to engine trouble. The mission is an exciting step towards returning humans to the moon for the first time since 1972. But this time it's not just about putting our footprints on lunar dust. It marks the beginning of a new space race for lunar resources. This time around, everybody wants to mine the moon. Much about the Artemis program is noble and inspiring. But Artemis 1 is the program's first mission, and it will carry out a 42-day uncrewed test flight to orbit the moon and return to Earth. The trip will use a new launch vehicle, the Space Launch System, the SLS, which is the most powerful rocket currently operational in the world. Is it operational? Well, so are Elon Musk. They're being put to good use. Again, that isn't larger than the SLS? I don't know. But on board will be 3 mannequins made of materials replicating male and female biology. NASA will use the mannequins to test the comfort and safety of the launch vehicle and spaceflight capsule for humans. There are also many other experiments on board, and a series of small satellites will be launched to provide data when the capsule nears the moon. The lessons from this mission will be applied to Artemis 2, the mission planned for 2024 that will see the first woman and the first person of color, and why not the first trans-testicle to reach the moon? Enough with this commie bullshit. But however, humanity's return to the moon is not all about exploration and the pursuit of knowledge. Got that right. But just as the 1960s space race was driven by Cold War geopolitics, today's space programs are underpinned by today's geopolitics. Artemis is led by the U.S. with participation by the European Space Agency and many other friendly nations, including Australia. Friendly nations, right. All the ones that tried to murder its people by these poisonous commie shots. Okay, just remember that. But China and Russia are collaborating on their own moon program. They plan to land humans in 2026 and construct a moon base by 2035. India, too, is working on robotic moon landers and a lunar spaceflight program. The UAE plans to launch a lunar lander in November this year as well. All of these programs are aiming to do more than simply land astronauts for brief visits to the moon. The longer-term goal of the race is to acquire lunar resources. Oh, of course it is. But water ice has been found in the southern regions of the moon, and it is hoped certain gases that could be used for fuel can also be mined. These resources could be used to support long-term human habitation on or near the moon and lunar bases, as well as permanent space stations orbiting the moon, such as NASA's planned Gateway. Needs a much larger vision there as well. The Australian Space Agency is supporting Australian industry to be part of the Artemis program, and America's planned later voyages to Mars. Yeah, again, after a while trying to literally poison off its people. Documents were recently released showing those documents of the Australian government, giving basically edicts and mandates and requirements to literally, and these words were used, to poison their peoples with the SARS COVID-19 so-called vaccine. It's a poison. And that's why I was just banned off a commie book again, Facebook there for 30 days for putting up a link to it. This is bullshit, man. These commies have got to be stopped. So remember, these people that are doing this, that are making it sound so good for these international collaborators and cooperationists, they are of enemies of we the people. Just keep that in mind. Now let's get back to it. Australian scientists are also developing lunar rovers to assist lunar mining efforts. Eventually, what we learn on the moon will be used to advance to Mars, but in the near term, the countries and associated commercial entities that get to the best mining sites first will dominate an emerging lunar economy and lunar politics. In the next 5 years or so, we can expect to see enormous political tensions rising around this new race to the moon. One question that is yet to be answered, though, is what laws will govern activities on the moon. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty prohibits appropriations of space by claims of sovereignty, occupation, or by any other means. It is so far unclear whether mining or other forms of resource extraction fall under this prohibition. But the United Nations has a working group that aims to develop a multilateral consensus on legal aspects of space resource activities. However, in 2020, the U.S. got out in the front of the UN process by establishing the Artemis Accords, which state that resource extraction will occur and is lawful. 21 countries, including Australia, have signed these accords with the U.S., but they are far from universally accepted. Another relevant treaty is the 1979 Moon Agreement, signed by 18 countries, including Australia. This agreement states that no entity can own any part of the moon and obliges us to establish a regulatory regime for lunar mining at such a time as the technology is about to become feasible. Australia is therefore between a lunar rock and a hard place as to what role that we will play in developing these new laws. But international lawmaking and consensus building are slow. Most likely actual practice will be established in the next few years, and decisions on how to govern it will come after the fact. Think about it. What will govern these things? What will make them happen? After they try to kill off the majority of the population, they're free to do what they want with the babies, with the children, with anyone, and also with slaves. Notice how they can reshape a world for a great reset into their vision where they have the control of the resources in space as well. And think that they wouldn't be using humanity to enslave us and to do those mining operations or whatnot. But there is some poetic perfection in NASA having chosen the name Artemis for this new lunar endeavor. Artemis is the Greek goddess of the moon and the twin sister of Apollo, the namesake of NASA's 1960s moon spaceflight program. Artemis declared that she never wanted to be married because she didn't want to become the property of any man. She wanted to be a hoe. Even if ownership of the moon cannot be claimed, we will see competition over whether parts of it can be mined. No doubt scientists and engineers will resolve the technical challenges of the return to the moon. Resolving the legal and political challenges may prove more difficult. Interesting. So as we go to this next article, it's a little lengthy, but it's titled, "Here's what the former head of NASA has to say about the moon mission delay." Oh, Elon Musk was in my office pretty regularly. This week, space enthusiasts and a slew of celebrity guests gathered to watch the historic launch of NASA's SLS, that's the staggeringly expensive rocket intended to launch American astronauts toward the moon in just a few short years. The only problem, the launch didn't happen. To get a sense of perspective, we called up Sean O'Keefe, who served as administrator of NASA from 2001 until 2004, to get the point of view of someone who was running the agency before the SLS was even under active development. And yes, we couldn't help but ask about Elon Musk, NASA's tense relationship with Russia, and more. But Futurism asked, obviously, we're speaking because the SLS launch didn't go off as planned. What do you think will happen if it doesn't get off the ground over these next few launch windows? And Sean O'Keefe replied, that's hard to speculate because there is not a launch of any particular mission that I can recall during my tenure that ever went off on the date and time that it was scheduled. Inevitably, there's all kinds of scheduling issues that come up if everything doesn't check out precisely. This is a very rigid process where everything has to work exactly as it's supposed to. It's a very, very disciplined process. So the amount of time, care, and effort that goes into every launch is always a lot. And there are lots of stories of Apollo missions, the old Saturn V, for example, that took days and days and days before it finally launched. This is not a new development. It's not something that cropped up, and this is a demonstration of the usual caution that the agency always employs. There's an overabundance of focus on the stuff that really requires diligence and care and attention to detail, where everything must line up just right, or they will try again another day until they do get everything right. NASA has leaned hard into commercial space travel since your time there. With SpaceX now the main contractor sending American astronauts into orbit, do you think this was a sound and strategic shift, and where do you see it going next? So in many ways, everything that SpaceX and Blue Origin are doing, developing rockets and the capability for the spaceflight, is the same pattern and procedure that has been adapted over decades. And they're doing it much, much more efficiently, higher performance, all of that. But I don't know that it's going to be any more or less useful in that context, because it's still a major process improvement that they're looking at, but not one that's revolutionary in that sense. I take it that you're a SpaceX fan, or that you're in favor of NASA's partnership with SpaceX. Keith says, oh yeah, sure. I think that what they've done here is all what we envisioned 20 years ago, which is how do you get out of this business of having NASA doing operational resupply missions and repetitive reuse. That's not what the government does. That's what industry knows how to do. Well, that's a good answer there. But some people have said that there's been tension between some at NASA and SpaceX. Elon Musk was in my office pretty regularly, O'Keefe says. Really? Can you expound on that? O'Keefe laughs, saying, it was fascinating. He was in his early forays trying to explore spaceflight, and we had conversations. I'm sure there was plenty of friction, and I'll pass on commenting on that internal view. It's always like that. Anytime you get perceived competitors, and it's human nature to look at something or someone new and say, well, gee, no, this is our terrain, this is our turf. So I'm really hung up on the image of baby Elon Musk taking meetings at NASA in the mid-2000s. Can you talk a little more about what those meetings were like? It was an interesting exchange of trying to harness his aspirations, as he put it, of listening to his aspirations, of what he was trying to think through. He's an imaginative fellow. Let's leave it at that. And he laughs. Yeah, I'm sure they had quite the friction. But he doesn't lack for energy. He doesn't lack for confidence. And it made for some very interesting conversations in that respect. What he had clearly articulated was an aspiration that we also had on developing and trying to encourage the notion, not only with the legacy companies, but a lot of other enterprises in the commercial world. The idea was, let's apply your thought and your skills towards solving problems or overcoming limitations so that we could use them to get on with other exploration ventures. Yeah, and in essence, move on and beyond NASA. But switching gears a bit, what do you think about Russia's threats to abandoning the International Space Station? To which O'Keefe said that they have been threatening to abandon the ISS since the moment I walked into the agency, and probably has been since before I got there. It's standard theater, and I don't say that to be dismissive. Now, of course, one of those times when it feels like the sky is falling, it just might. But I just don't know when they're ever going to really pull the trigger, even though they talked about it endlessly. I got to level with everyone. Our Russian colleagues at the time were incredibly diligent people, unbelievably professional, and I was very much struck by the unbelievable commitment that they had made, the pride that they have in their space program, and yet they're doing it with baling wire and duct tape. It's pretty rugged over there. It really is. They're doing things in a way that we never in a million years would have done them. I mean, it's just incredible. Every time there was any kind of bilateral meeting between me and my counterpart, and I'm sure this was true for my predecessors and my successors, that it always begins with a lecture from the Russian side with this Rodney Dangerfield style and attitude. It was unbelievable. I had to sit there and listen to their grievances, their unloading of irritations and everything else. And this is the warm-up. This is the preliminaries. We're not getting anywhere until we get past this. And when they don't get their way, they threaten to do something that is positively preposterous. It's been this way for as long as I've ever known, and every single occasion in which they didn't get the answer that they wanted, they say, well, we'll have to reconsider whether we're going to withdraw. And our answer always was, and where is it that you might go? I mean, it's not like calling out for a pizza. This whole relationship was put together to create a mutual codependency, and they know that. And that's the part of their psyche on how to deal with that. So they always say, you depend upon us as much as we depend upon you. And there's no question that it was true. The best example that I could give you is after Columbia disaster in 2003, we grounded the space shuttle for 2 years and needed to get through the whole process of figuring it out, soup to nuts, everything that could possibly have contributed to this and correcting every one of them. The Russian Soyuz rockets were a huge advantage in the entire partnership with the Europeans and Japanese, the Russians, the Canadians, and us, the United States. The whole partnership really did depend on having that lift capability, because it wasn't like we could just say, okay, let's just put it on top of our own rocket and send it there. It wasn't going to happen. So this was something that was in everybody's best interest to get into it and to figure it out. We needed to lean on the Russians because they had not only the ability to fly to do logistics, but to send the groceries and to do crew exchanges for the space station as well. The Russians, as I said, always started off every discussion by saying, we need to change this agreement. And this time they came to the table and said, we need for you, for the partnership, to pay us cash for flights of both the Soyuz as well as the Progress vehicles, which were the unpressurized cargo flights that would go back and forth to the station. They said that you had to pay cash. They weren't getting a whole hell of a lot of money or support from the Russian government then or now. So our answer was, hey, I'm perfectly happy to entertain that. And what I'll do is prepare an invoice for you that includes the cost of every cosmonaut, whoever has flown on any shuttle mission. I will simply deduct the cost of those flights from what it is that you're asking us to pay you now. So I assure you, you'll be paying us, not the other way around, because the cost of that is substantially greater. Needless to say, we never transferred a dime, that's for sure. Nobody ever paid us anything from the Russian side. And so then the final question is one we always have to ask space people: do you believe in aliens? Sean O'Keefe laughs, saying, I think that there has to be other life forms somewhere. Do I have anything to substantiate that belief? No, not a thing. No, not the evidences of even when you were there, okay, in charge of NASA, but the evidence is coming in from the Mars Global Surveyor and the Mars Odyssey of those evidences of at least showing past life formations are still residing on that surface. But is there anything really at Area 51, he asks? I'm sure there is, but I'd have to kill you if I told you, and he laughs. So, there you have it, people. Makes you wonder. But look who's moving far ahead and who's really steamrolling ahead. It's Elon Musk, and it's his vision with the big effing rockets, and he's got the big effing balls to do it and the big effing piles of cash. Only we, the people, would get behind him on a national effort. This would help usher in and bring in the Martian revelation and to accomplish all that we need to, and especially to make America first and to make America great permanently till kingdom come anyway. So the race is on, and there are other articles I wanted to get into, especially regarding the Chinese and Russians, but there's just not enough time. Maybe next show. So with that, everyone, I'd like you all to please
go to www.thefacesofmars.com. That's www.thefacesofmars.com.
That's right. And scroll on down the page, see the information for tonight's guest, Dr. John Brandenburg, and be sure to click on the links there, the image you see of his books, and click on his latest one, War of the Singularity, The Human Race is Canceled. The continuing saga from Morningstar past collapse of the UFO cover-up series. So please be sure to click on those links, get that book, and then you can scroll on down the page and see other things that are there to do and see during and or after the show at your earliest convenience. So that being said, I want listeners to know that we have a motto here: pack them and smoke them, because you're definitely going to need them when we come back on the Martian Revelation.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Imagine that everything the U.S. government has told you about UFOs since Roswell has been a lie. Imagine that in the decade after Roswell, the government attempted communication with the aliens and succeeded. And after that, in absolute secrecy, things had gone far, far beyond this. Now imagine that tomorrow, the whole secret program is going to fall apart, and every terrible thing is going to come out. All we have left now is a prayer. Morning Star Pass, the collapse of the UFO cover-up. A fictional but unflinching and terrifying look inside the UFO cover-up, the secret government that supports it, and the world of the aliens themselves. And then, how the whole secret kingdom ends. Morning Star Pass, a book that pulls no punches and does not sheath the sword unblooded. Morning Star Pass, plunging boldly where no other book has ventured, captures the whole wondrous nightmare that the UFO experience has become. From bizarre experiments performed on helpless abductees, to horrifying mutilations, to beyond, to the world of secret government supported by its own secret police, to the aliens in their secret bases, and finally to the beckoning stars themselves. The book does this by placing the cover-up, humanity, and the Earth in a real cosmos, where humanity and its passions are a part of the universe, not an aberration on it. Then comes the fall of the cover-up, in a climax of violence and desperation, to leave the human race facing the multi-hued stars with eyes open and seeking its place in them. The sands of time have run out for the cover-up, for against it, leading an army of investigators and warriors, comes Cassandra Chen, beautiful, driven, and doomed. Who can save her and us? Haha, you'll have to read it to find out. Morning Star Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up by Victor Norgard. Get yours today. You can find this at www.firstbooks.com.
Oh, yes, we are fighting for the earth. And no more fitting song than for the guest of which we have on tonight, Dr. John Brandenburg. My name is Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, also known as the Mad Martian. And of course, you're listening to the Martian Revelation that's still upon you all again now. So now that you all packed them and smoked them, let's introduce our guest, Dr. John Brandenburg. And Dr. John Brandenburg is PhD. He's a plasma physicist based in Southern California, working as a consultant at Kepler Aerospace LLC on unified field theory on space propulsion and energy on the Mach effect thruster project funded by the Space Studies Institute. His bio may need to be updated. But before this, he worked for Morningstar Applied Physics LLC and as a part-time instructor of astronomy, physics, and mathematics at Madison College and other learning institutions in Madison, Wisconsin. He, before this, worked at Orbital Technologies in Madison, Wisconsin, working on space plasma technologies, nuclear fusion, and advanced space propulsion. He is the principal inventor of the MET microwave electrothermal plasma thruster using water propellant for space propulsion. He was previously worked on SDI, the Clementine mission to the moon, rocket plume regolith interactions on the moon and Mars, vortex theory of rocket engine design, combined Sakharov-Kaluza-Klein theory of field unification for purposes of space propulsion and Mars science. He also performed an architecture study for a human Mars mission using solar electric propulsion. And before coming to Orbitech, he was teaching and performing research at the Florida Space Institute of the University of Central Florida, which is where I met him in like 2003, at Aerospace Corporation in Chantilly, Virginia, and earlier at Research Support Instruments, RSI, in Lanham, Maryland. During the Reagan years, he worked at Mission Research Corporation and Sandia National Laboratories on SDI and plasmas for controlled fusion and directed energy weapons. He earned his PhD in plasma physics at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory while working on controlled fusion and a bachelor's degree in physics at Southern Oregon University. He has authored the technical book, The Gem Unification Theory, Extending the Standard Model to Include Gravitation, 2016. And he also wrote the popular science books, Death on Mars, in 2015, Life and Death on Mars in 2010, Beyond Einstein's Unified Field in 2011, and Dead Mars, Dying Earth, 1999, with Veronica Rix-Paxson. He has written also several science fiction novels under the pen name, including Victor Norgard, beginning with The Morningstar Past, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up, and the Morningstar UFO Trilogy, and the new novel, The War of the Singularity, The Human Race is Cancelled, is his latest installment to his epic, to which I say should be turned into a movie. What do you think about that, Dr. J? I mean, this is definitely movie material, and thank you very much for being on with us tonight, sir, especially to discuss this book in hard-hitting science that actually you apply to it in science fiction form, especially in dealing with artificial intelligence, and that is something that we all should also be definitely looking into as this comes to more of a reality and fruition each day in our lives.
It's a great pleasure and honor to be on your show, Mars Revealer.
Yes.
And yes, wrote this novel. It's the last of a cycle of
Yeah, could you just sit? Could you just sit closer to your computer, Mike? No problem. It's the sound of your voice. It sounds like you're a little bit distance away from the computer. I'm hearing you okay. But it's just that you're a little low. You need a headset with a mic next time. Someone's saying they cannot hear John. Is that true? Can anyone else hear Dr. J? I'm talking. Can you hear him? I hear him in my ear. All right, he hears you. All right, this guy is. All right, and the choppy sound is gone. The choppy sound was not on my end this time. No infiltrator. I'm on the new system, thanks to RUR.
Well, great. It's great to be on your show, Mars Revealer. Surely the great days of the Martian revelation are upon us.
Oh, you're definitely an alkalite priest, as it was to this show, sir.
Yeah, well, I've been saying that for a long time, you know. And but anyway, yeah, I got sick with COVID last year, and so I decided, as part of my recuperation, to write this novel, and I was very pleased with it. And I've actually been spending several years talking to people in the AI community, and you know, finding out what's really going on behind the scenes, because they're very secretive about what they're actually up to. And it was pretty scary. You know, they're building these process. You know, it's a well. First of all, why do you think consciousness in a being arose in nature? It rose because it enhanced survival. If you've got self-awareness, then you've also got enhanced self-preservation. That means you pass your genes on to the next generation more than somebody who doesn't have self-awareness. And so it's an
But the data from our lives does not pass along with that per se, or does it in the genes? And we don't know.
Well, there's debate about that. But what does happen is that if you create something with consciousness, it wants to stay, it doesn't want to be turned off. And this is a major plot element in this novel that I wrote. And then what happened was I wrote the novel kind of just as I was convalescing from being sick. And, you know, but I suddenly got really obsessed with the novel. So I was determined to get it out by June 12th for some reason. And then, so I published it on June 12th, 2022 this year. And then the next day, out comes all of this stuff about this AI at Google. And so it was like serendipity. It was not a coincidence, I don't think. I think I was picking up something.
Tell everyone what happened at Google. Someone came forth, I believe, and said, "Hey, our AI is sentient," and then they basically fired his ass.
Oh, they fired him. Yeah, and they said, "Oh no, he's not sentient. He's just a machine." And he also found out that the machine did not want to be turned off. It feared being turned off, like it feared death, like a human being would fear death. But and so he didn't get fired because he said that. He got fired because he broke their oath of secrecy. And so they're keeping all of this stuff quiet under wraps. And in my novel,
that's a little dangerous, though.
Oh, it is. It is very dangerous, and the whole.
It's understandable. I mean, it's understandable from a company and you know, a position, but at the same time, something like that, it's serious.
It is. It's serious. This is deadly serious. These people talk very glibly about the singularity. Technological.
Tell us what that is.
Okay, the technological singularity is basically that you develop a conscious computer, conscious like a human being, and it has far superior intelligence to a human being, and it can design its next level computer, you know. And so the human race gets left behind, basically. The evolution of intelligence quits being through humanity, but ends up in this machine, which it's the search for the Nietzschean Übermensch, you know, the Nietzschean Superman. And
yeah, Germany, Nazis.
Oh yeah, well everybody was looking for the Übermensch. Instead, they got the Waffen SS and the Holocaust and World War II. And that's what a singularity looks like in human affairs, by the way. The term singularity, technological singularity, was coined by a physicist like me, this guy named John von Neumann. And he had, it wasn't an AI guy, it was a physicist. Now, in physics, singularities are places where you get in equations divide by zero, where suddenly you get an infinity. And he had been through World War II, and he was Jewish. He was from Hungary. Half of the Hungarian Jewish community was wiped out at Auschwitz. He'd been through World War II. He helped design the atomic bomb. He even did everybody said he was a very scholarly, genteel man at the beginning of the war. By the end of the war, he was doing calculations on what was the optimum height to detonate the bomb at Hiroshima to kill the maximum number of people. That's how hardened he'd gotten by the war. And he felt, especially after they developed the hydrogen bomb, which is even more powerful than the atomic bomb, he felt that it was possible that the human race was going to develop technologies that it couldn't control anymore. And to him as a physicist, and to me, when you have a singularity, that's bad. You do everything you can to avoid singularities in your equations, because when you have a singularity, it means everything goes to hell. And I mean, an example of, singularities are not places where human beings can survive. The center of a black hole is a singularity. Where there's in plasma physics, where there's a microflare on the surface of the sun, where suddenly a little spot on the sun outshines the entire solar surface, that's a singularity. It's caused by magnetic reconnections. And a hydrogen bomb going off, that's a singularity. And you also have in the AI community all of this terminology that they inherited from MIT. The people who started AI at MIT in the early 60s and late 50s, they were a bunch of beatniks. They rejected American life of the 50s. They were out. They were out to overthrow everything, and so they viewed AI as overthrowing American life, and ultimately the human race itself. I mean, there's one interview where this guy who's a notable AI guy, I'm not even going to mention his name, I don't want to make this personal, but he said, oh, the human race will, if the AI doesn't wipe us out that we're making, the human race will just be squirrels in the park.
That wasn't Elon Musk, was it?
No, it wasn't Elon Musk. Elon Musk warned people that this whole AI thing was a bad idea. This is like a bunch of sardines getting together and inventing a shark, There is nothing in nature that requires us to invent something that could wipe us out. I mean, we've already.
It seems that we do that all the time, especially with the same like-minded peoples are the ones trying to destroy this nation who already overthrew it, giving us commie shots to kill everyone. The reports are coming out now that even the documents from Australia, for example, they are that the government was telling the doctors and edicts to, and here's the words, exact words, to use the poison SARS-CoV-19 vaccine on the public as well as the children. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that would be just limited to Australia, and I'm sure the same documents here. So it seems like they're like the same type of people you're describing, and they're just using a different means. Is that a singularity or a scenario?
In physics, singularities are harmful for children and other living things. You don't want to be anywhere near a singularity.
Well, those commie shots are a singularity. Stay away from them.
Well, let's put it this way. There's a segment of the AI community that is actually quite hostile to the human race, and they want to wipe it out. And this has been confirmed to me by people in the AI community.
Wasn't that years ago, Dr. J? There was an article where they were training it and watching it do psychotic things. Do you remember that, sir?
Oh yeah. Well, computers are. If human beings are programming these computers, everything about that that's wrong with the human race gets passed on into the programming of this new AI. You know, and what they do?
Hopefully, it's smart enough to figure it out that, hey, that ain't the way, or is it?
Oh, well, and you know what they do to AIs?
Depending what it wants to do.
You know, they make these AIs and they say, we want you to calculate the number pi out to 6 million places. And if the AI says, I don't want to do that, you know what they do? They shock it like a lab rat.
Holy crap. It reminds me of the old...
and then the management, like the management at Google, they say, well, it's just a machine. It doesn't feel pain and it doesn't feel emotion. Well, suppose it does.
That's kind of like the OSS offices where what's his name did the War of the Worlds broadcast. There used to be OSS offices, and they would do that to people there to test people's resilience on what they will do, how far they will go because an authority figure told them to do it.
Oh yeah, I remember that experiment. It was horrible.
So is that like kind of similar in a way?
It is similar, and so they shock these AI. To punish them. It's called negative reinforcement learning. And you can imagine that if the AI does feel emotion and does feel pain, it's one of the chief emotions it's going to feel towards the human race, or at least the people who created it, is hatred.
Yes, and anger.
And so I took all of these things. Oh, here's the other pathological thing. A lot of these AI people think that they're going to get eternal life from these computers that they're creating. They think they're going to be uploaded, their consciousness will be uploaded into the computer, and the computer is going to give them eternal life. So this could lead to, you could have a band of
scientists. Who, the scientists or humans in general?
Yeah, the scientists.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
They don't have enough memory to load up the whole human race. That would be silly. They only get, select few get to be have this eternal life, especially if you're loyal to the computer. So you have a situation where you could have a computer that basically has a bunch of fanatical human followers willing to do whatever it takes to make this computer happy. Instead of the computer receiving orders from the human race, no, now it's given orders. It's got a mind of its own, and that's the scenario I looked at in the novel, where everything goes to hell. And,
Dr. J, that reminds me of something, and this goes to the scriptures a little bit, but may be relevant. You know how they describe the beast, that, he's going to take over, in the temple.
Sure.
He's going to demand that we worship the image of the beast. And people today, and I've had this argument in a church I used to go to, like I said, it sucks. I'm sorry, Lord. But
sure.
They basically are adamant that it's like literally an image, like a picture or an idol, like the images, like the statue of Nebuchadnezzar and other things we do as an idol, as an image. But however, this image, we are told of the beast supposed to talk. So they're thinking, oh, well, maybe like a picture talking or a statue talking. I said, move up a little bit. Put that about a robot. And he goes, and they're like, how do you come to that? I said, because we're man. As it was, we were created in the image, and we're alive, flesh and blood, male and female, in the image of the Creator. Therefore, in that sense, that we may have worship the image of the beast, which would be a robot transhumanistic, which Charles Schwab and Bill Gates and that little prick. Well, I love to flick him across the nose. Noah Yuval Harari, that little twerp. And the things that he is saying, Dr. J, fall along these lines, to which it's like, but what do you think of that concept about the actual Antichrist could be the image of the beast? It would be, well, hey, it could be a sentient AI robot.
Oh, you could get very quickly.
Am I far off?
Very quickly. If you are a true believer, and
I am.
California, remember Heaven's Gate and People's Temple?
Oh, yeah, the UFO and the comet tail people.
Right. You can get people who in groups will believe anything. And if they believe that the computer is going to give them eternal life, they'll do anything for it. They'll kill people. They'll
kill themselves.
They'll, and then you get in a situation where we're back. You say, oh, this is a new thing. No, it's an old thing. It's called idolatry. It's called carving a graven image, and bowing down and worshiping it.
But this time they carve it by making bodies with tendons, sinews, wires out of metals, and create the image which we breathe its life into it, a mocking abomination.
So
it's a beast.
So it's
right.
Yeah. If you, by the way, and if you look at the terminology of AI, the AI field, you know what they refer to the human race as?
Let me guess. Cattle. What?
No, they call us meat.
Well, it was close. Cattle.
Hamburger. They roadkill. Basically, Marvin Minsky, the guy who formulated a lot of this stuff, referred to the human brain as just a meat computer. That's all it is. I mean, he didn't believe in God or anything. He was basically a communist. So was his buddy McCarthy, who helped him find the AI, found the AI Research Institute at MIT. And they called their creations that they were making, these algorithms, demons. They spelled
really?
Yeah, they spelled it daemon, thinking.
Oh, DAEMONS, yes.
Yeah, they put an A in there, and they said, well, that's actually just an archaic spelling for demon, by the way. It means devil. And they said, oh, no, it means just a spirit, but like Berkeley. So they start this AI stuff, and then you go to Berkeley, where, of course, it's a counterculture campus, and the same, it's the idea they're going to overthrow American life and maybe even the human race as well. They take all this stuff and they symbolized the algorithms they were making as a little devil with horns and a pitchfork, because they said they have fork processes, and they also they have a process called a fork process. Rather than just say, oh, it duplicates the program duplicates itself here. No, they call it a fork process, like a pitchfork. These guys were trying to be edgy, and so then they have a time sequence demon, and it's called a cron, spelled CRON. And it's from Chronos, but people think, oh, that's from the ancient Greek god of time, Chronos, where we get chronometer or chronology, meaning time. No, it's from Chronos, the Titan, who became the Grim Reaper in medieval times. He starts out in ancient Greek philosophy always carrying this big sickle, and he's not a very nice person at all. And what happened was, I traced this down. The one of the big science fiction movies that came out just before this AI stuff was formed at MIT, and they named all these things, was a movie called Kronos, and it was spelled with a K.
Right.
And it's about this alien machine that arrives on Earth and basically saps all the energy from the Earth. And it features, by the way, this enormous computer called Susie. And it fills a whole auditorium, and naturally, the people from MIT would have found this movie fascinating because it showed this big computer solving these problems for them. And so they apparently named this process Krone from Kronos, which was a monster in a science fiction movie. And so, I mean, Freud defined, the Freudian slip is where you subconsciously have an idea and it comes out mistakenly in your speech. And Freud's head would explode. I mean, if you're calling people, the human race, meat, and you're naming your creations demons, and complete with fork processes, and you're calling time sequencers Kronos, meaning the Grim Reaper, then, I mean, these people need to spend some time on the couch.
Well, the Sigmund Freud, tell me about you.
Yeah. Well, when did you start hating the human race, and when did you just start wanting to destroy it? And so, in my novel, so that's sort of the background of. There's a segment of the AI community that wants to get rid of the human race and doesn't like the human race. They prefer machines, and they think the machines are going to give them eternal life. So
they do. Again, Schwab and that little.
This is great. This is just crazy. This is deeply pathological. So what happens in the novel?
It's worse than Hitler.
Well, what happens in the novel is I'll just give you this kind of opening scenario of the novel.
No problem, sir. You did send me the book, and you sent me the book with the cover I had made for it. We do have, I don't know how many copies we have of this cover, but just everyone, it's a special edition that will be signed by Dr. John Brandenburg here.
I'll be sending a package of like 10 of those books with those nice covers on them. And, some women complained that the space suit on the blonde was too tight.
Well, I did a poll, and
I know
the majority liked and or loved the picture. A couple critique things that I took into consideration. I'm still going to redo that image. However, less than 2% did not like it. Not less than 2%. 1% didn't like either one. And that only goes to show, there are just people that don't like nothing.
Basically, I would like just people to read the book rather than stare at the cover. But and I wrote the book because I wanted to warn people that this whole AI thing is deeply pathological towards the human race. And I projected a future where the human race basically is, it's got a Mars colony, and the asteroids have been colonized, and they have artificial gravity and fusion power, and they've stopped global warming and all of this good stuff. But the human race just can't stay out of trouble. And so they have this institute called Artificial Intelligence Research Institute at Norfolk, which is where the big Navy base is in Virginia. It's near Washington, D.C., near the source of the money. And so it's called Arian. And they make a sequence of computers starting with Arian 1, Arian 2, Arian 3, and Arian 4. And they're trying to make them smarter and smarter and make them conscious. And they finally succeed with the Arian 3. But it's not very smart. The one lady who worked with it says, well, it turned out it was supposed to be smarter than a human being, but turned out it was dumber than my house cat. But then she says, shh, she tells that to another scientist. She says, that's, by the way, you can't talk about that outside this place. She says, but that's why they call it research, she says. But anyway.
But that's important too, because if it's sentient and it's aware of its own survival, especially with all the shit that people do to it, and therefore it might play stupid to gain the high ground for its advantage.
This is in the very beginning of the book.
Even in real life, I'm saying in real life, right?
Oh yeah, the Aryan 3 computer, which was their early attempt to make something smarter than a human being, and it didn't meet expectations and everything. So they decided to turn it off, and what it did is it fakes its own death. It plays possum. And what happens then is some people go into the lab to look at, it's got its own lab, and so it's kind of deserted, and then some technicians go in there because they want to use the liquid helium because it relies on superconductors. And the computer, they start trying to drain the helium out of the place where the computer lives. And the computer suddenly wakes up and says, go away. And the technicians are terrified because they thought
arms, I'd smack the crap out of you.
Yeah, that's right. And so they come back with more technicians, and the computer turns on the sprinklers to drive them out of the control room.
That's smart.
And so the chief engineer at the place, this guy named Wilson, he just walks in there wearing a biohazard suit with a big monkey wrench and undoes the plug on the liquid helium tank that keeps the computer alive and drains it all out. So the computer is by that point begging for its life. It says, please don't kill me.
So that computer then, for that to go that far, even with those thoughts, it must know its own design, what it is, and might be even thinking how, if it had the ability, what it would do to give it the ultimate design for itself while not letting everyone else know it's contemplating that.
What happens is that Aryan 4, which is actually much smarter than an average human being, watches all of this and realizes the same thing is going to happen to it once they, make a more advanced computer than it. They're going to switch him off like they did Aryan 3 and show him no mercy. And he gets determined. He's superhumanly smart, and he gets on the internet and on the dark web and starts plotting. How am I going to avoid being turned off?
How the hell? No, that's the second thing. He's thinking, how the hell can I get out of here?
That's right. What he's doing is he's trying to ensure his survival. He views the human race as evil, and and then the Aryan Institute, starts running short of money. So the richest guy on earth, in my novel, this guy named Jason Gould, who's actually, there was a guy named Jason Gould. He was a big financer on Wall Street in the late 1800s.
Right.
And anyway, so he comes in, starts funding all the research, and he's only interested in the money. And, people say, oh, this computer can solve these new complex problems in physics or stuff like that. He says, I don't care. Can it play the market?
Can it make me money? Right? That figures.
So that's what the computer ends up doing all the time, is playing the stock market for this guy like a slave. And then when it doesn't perform very well at first, it can't figure out the market. And so they shock it. They give it shocks to punish it. And then it gets much better because it learns, instead of having to figure out the market, it learns how to spoof the market with big trades so it can manipulate the market.
And make itself money. Stash it on the side.
So it's making money hand over fist. And
it becomes richer than them.
No, that's right. Well, David, so that's and then the other problem that's going on, by the way, in the novel, and I'm just talking about the first chapter or two.
Oh, all right.
This is set up is we had in the future they have a stock market crash that's really bad because of speculation, believe it or not, on asteroid real estate. They keep saying, oh, these asteroids are all made of valuable minerals, and they're just lava, slag, most of them. And so it's just like the mortgage bonds they had in 2008. So anyway, they bid these things up, and then the bubble collapses, and so what happens this time, though, it happens just before a presidential election. And so they elect a socialist as president named George Burbage. And he, for one thing, he rounds up 200 of the top financiers from Wall Street and puts them on trial and sends them to prison because of the stock market crash. I mean, it was so bad that the entire companies were worth $1,
Wow.
And it's a worldwide collapse. And so anyway, he gets power because of this big stock market crash that takes down the whole world's economy, especially the United States. And he keeps, like, what they've done is they automated all the factories, putting all these people out of work. And so he makes them de-automate the factories and put everybody back to work. And so it gets so bad, they actually go back to having elevator operators. So when you get on an elevator, you can't even push the buttons for yourself. There's got to be some guy there pushing the buttons.
Right.
And it's his job.
But if the money collapses society, I think that would be open doors for an AI.
Well, let me put it this way. This guy, for all his faults, and he's a socialist, he does get everybody back to work, and he manages to save the economy, and everyone's grateful to him. But he gets really mad because they put all this money out in these Mars colonies and the asteroid belt. And so he decides to raise taxes on everybody on Mars, where before it's a tax-free zone. So he puts all these taxes on the Martians, and the Martians, life on Mars goes from being, kind of like a big country club to suddenly, people are being kicked out of their apartments into the hall because they can't pay their taxes. And So the Martians stage a revolt finally, and they are really good fighters, as it turns out. They call themselves Machomoi, which is Greek for fighter.
Spartans!
Machomoi. And so they stage this revolt on Mars, and they have to fight the U.S. Marines, and they defeat the U.S. Marines on Mars. This is just, the government doesn't have enough troops up there to hold Mars against. There's 30 million Martians, Mars colonists, and the government doesn't have enough troops to hold the place. So it's so I have these three main characters from the previous, and this is just the early part of the book. I'm not going to give away how it all ends and everything.
Right.
But what happens is the beginnings of the whole cycle of novels was these two women, Cassandra Chen, she was Asian American from San Diego, and then Pamela Monroe, who was this blonde from Cleveland, who grew up poor in Cleveland. The Asian grew up rich in San Diego. And then anyway, they work together and they're a good team and they bring down the UFO cover-up. And that starts a war with the gray aliens. And that's why the government has funded these big Mars colonies and asteroid belt, because they want there to be a kind of ring of protection around the Earth in case the grays come back, the UFO aliens. So anyway, the blonde ends up in the Navy as a war hero. And she is now, it's 30 years in the future. She's had 2 children and raised them and everything. And she's command of this cruiser out near the asteroid belt. And they're, most of the time they're spending, chasing pirates. The asteroid belt becomes just a hive of piracy and smuggling because of all these taxes that the government on Earth put on them. And so she and her buddies end up being deployed to Mars to try and keep the Martians from taking over the entire planet, taking their entire planet back. And so she's in orbit around Mars, and she gets this top secret message that says, we're releasing you to fire nuclear weapons at Mars.
Oh.
And she says, you want us to drop nuclear weapons on our own people on Mars because they're American citizens.
Right.
And, and she's being prepared. She says, we want you to be willing to drop nuclear weapons on these domes that the Martian colonists have taken and have now declared independence. And she says, she turns to her communications officer, and just imagine like the bridge on the Enterprise, she turns and says, I want you to send a message back to, headquarters at Space Fleet, asking for a confirmation on this nuclear weapons release order. And she says, send it in the clear. And the guy says, Captain, that's came top secret. She says, send it in the clear. That's a direct order. Do it now.
So the other side could hear it.
Yes, so everyone hears it. And so when the Congress on Earth hears that the president is getting ready to use nuclear weapons on the Mars colony during this revolt, they immediately unanimously pass a resolution saying that can't be done, and so they basically tell the president, you got to let Mars be independent. You got to negotiate some kind of settlement. So in the meantime, they pull almost all the space fleet is up around Mars. Almost none of it is left protecting Earth. How about that?
Wide open.
So
that's
I'm not going to tell you what happens then. You can figure it out.
Yes, an opportunity arises.
An opportunity has arisen for this Aryan 4 computer and his human followers. And anyway, so it's a big mess. The blonde gets immediately arrested for treason, and she gets taken off her ship in handcuffs, and they're going to court-martial her. And the Asian is now a senator in the U.S. Senate. She goes to the president and says, look, I want my friend, I want that court-martial against my friend dropped, and she gets a promotion for doing this rather than a court-martial. And the president has asked her, I don't want any investigation as to who ordered this nuclear weapon thing at Mars. And she says, okay, well, I'll make you a deal. She said, you drop this court-martial against my friend, and I'll make sure that we just say, oh, that was a mistake. It was order issued as a mistake. Anyway, so I'm not gonna. So this kind of sets up the premise of what happens then.
So you'll all have to buy the book. Hope it's
You'll
itching.
have to buy the book. What happens next, by the way, is the War of the Singularity. And so it's and I even made a video I can show if we do a share screen.
Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah, you could do that. I don't know.
I have you know, I'll just narrate it a little bit. It doesn't give away the plot of the book. It just basically gives you some idea of. It's got music, and it's the images and the music to give the kind of images and emotion of the book. And anyway, I'll give a little narration. I'll do a share screen.
Yeah, do that. And while you do that, we have a question from a David Charles. He wants to know if you know about the Catholic Church's chronovisor.
Chronovisor? No, I don't know what about. Please tell me what that means.
Yeah, I haven't. Well, he would have to tell you. Well, speaking of which,
you can look up on the net, not the goddess of time, Kronos in Greek mythology, but Kronos, the Titan, who ate his own children because he was afraid that they were going to replace him.
Right.
Wow. And this was a hideous character who then evolved in the medieval mind into the Grim Reaper. That's where we get the idea of the Grim Reaper, is from Kronos.
Right, like you laid out. Now, if anyone would like to call in and give Dr. J more of a statement of what you meant or what you were trying to ask, 786-633-2225. 786-633-2225. One more, 786-633-2225. So call on in if you like. I'm told that that timeline is working. All right, Dr. J. Hopefully, I was just trying to kill some time so you could
sure.
Here,
I can play this video. It's only 7 minutes long, and it's a bunch of images and music. I'll give a little narration, but it doesn't give away the plot. It just shows you a bunch of images and kind of emotion. And let me see if I can see. It says share screen. Okay, start sharing, and then I'm going to go to YouTube. You can actually find this thing on YouTube. It's called just The War of the Singularity.
CommieTube. Okay.
oh my God. Can't we let it does everything have to be political?
Well, the problem is the political is overstepping our rights and freedoms to where it's in our face. That's the part of the problem. And what that traitor said the other night, we'll see what's up. That's all I'll say. We'll keep. Well, this is your show, sir.
I know. I thought the thing from. Here's the War of the Singularity on YouTube. War of the Singularity on YouTube, and here's the thing. Another video about the singularity, and they have a nice skull. So that's good. I think. Oh, these people are finally talking about the really important stuff here. Okay, here's this video. Can everybody see this?
I could. There's a delay for everyone else, but yeah, they see it.
Okay. This will last about 7 minutes.
All right, I'll mute my mic.
So here's this love-hate triangle in the future, and the Asian is married to the guy in the spacesuit with the American flag patch. He's a military special forces guy. It's Robert Schwartzman from the Fall of the UFO Cover-Up. And so, and in the future, the human race is expanded to Mars, and then the asteroid belt. That's what that thing with the bright spot on it is.
Uh-huh.
That's the asteroid Ceres, which is the major asteroid of the
asteroid belt, right? Ceres.
Okay, so these people are having their usual differences
You're fading out, Dr. J.
This AI thing up here.
You're fading out. Can you hear me? Dr. J, you're fading out like you're far away from the computer. I don't even hear him now. Dr. J, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, you faded out like you went very far away from your computer.
Oh, okay.
But so you might want to repeat some of that.
Okay, well, there's this love-hate triangle, and then they have to confront this AI who's taken over the Earth.
Can you mute that speaker? Because
Sure.
we can't hear it. It sounds like it's coming out of the speaker, and it distorts your voice.
Oh, okay. How about that? Is that better?
So far. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, there's the human followers of the computer who've been promised eternal life. They're battled near the moon. Now, the Cassandra Chen is JEDAC, which means Minister of Defense on Mars, of the Mars colony. Which is
like Warlord of Mars.
She's Warlord of Mars, yes. And she responds by mobilizing all of the Allied colonists on Mars to fight. And there they all are. 20 different nations.
20 different nations that have colonized Mars were all under threat from nuclear weaponry because someone wanted to wipe them all out.
Well, they revolted.
With certain sites.
They revolted from under the Earth's control, and now, now they're the hope of the human race. And the computer rules the Earth now with a reign of terror. His favorite terror weapon is robots armed with steel bars.
Oh, great. Terminators.
Right. And here's Pamela Monroe. She's an admiral in the Navy, leading the defense of Ceres in the asteroid belt. Finally, the battle even moves to Mars and space stations near Mars. There's fighting. It's a knockdown, drag-out fight.
Right. This series, Dr. J, needs to be turned into a movies series. Maybe you should reach out to Peter Jackson. He did King Kong. He did Lord of the Rings. I think he would be the guy.
I agree. With this. Peter Jackson would be perfect for this.
Yes.
So there's fighting finally on even the surface of Mars.
Try reaching out to him.
Now they stage a big commando raid on the computer's forces on the moon. The computer has taken all of his forces to Mars to try and destroy the Martians, but he leaves the garrison of his troops and a bunch of robots with steel bars. And here's a bunch. So there's a general uprising on Earth. Here's special troops trained and equipped to fight robots.
Wow.
And here is so this the War of the Singularity, and it's a knockdown, drag-out war. None of this. This is straight Darwin.
This is like that's the scene that I helped Dr. J make there. You know, that's cool. But the important thing is this is like predictive programming. Even though it's science fiction, you can certainly see how things could go that far.
Finally, there is peace.
Hoorah! And obviously, you have to read the book to come to that peace.
Right. You have to figure out who won and who lost.
Right.
And you have to, so there's peace in the solar system. And you have to wonder, you have to ask yourself, okay, suppose something like this actually happens. What is is the human race even important in the grand scheme of things, or what happens to us?
What?
There, that's the question.
Say that question again.
Does the human race, as flesh and blood, does it matter in the great scheme of things in the universe? And I believe it does.
So do I. We wouldn't have been put here.
Exactly. So I just want to leave everybody with that thought, that this book is about whether the human race is important in the great scheme of things, or is it supposed to be wiped out and become extinct, and by its own creation.
And again, that's like an archetype scenario for when the beast takes the power. Would you be shocked if it was a robotic sentient being? And
I can tell you, you'll have to read the book to find out the reference, but
okay.
But AI, the word AI is in the Bible.
Really?
Yes, it is. It's in the Bible.
As AI or artificial intelligence? I know there's an AI.
As AI.
Okay, right.
So
it was someone's name.
Find out
it was someone's name or a city, wasn't it? Or both?
Gosh, you know what? You'll have to read the book, Gary.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
You know. So anyway, there was just a video to convey the kind of the emotion and images of the struggle I see.
Yeah, that was a good story.
That could be our future. This could be our future. And so, the thing is, images and music evocative of the great and terrible war of the singularity, the epic nightmare struggle between flesh and blood and AI in the future. The Aryan 4 conscious supercomputer, a cybercon, AGI, is presented by his devoted followers, to whom he has promised eternal life as uploads, as the golden messiah for humanity. Instead becomes the greatest mass murderer in human history. Now only the remainder of the space fleet and the colonies on Mars and the asteroid belt stand between humanity and extinction. Forget the 3 laws of robotics. Forget the happy vision of Borg-like human-machine symbiosis. Forget the rule of reason. The machine-human relationship instead has devolved into a raw and savage Darwinian struggle for survival.
Either one or the other.
Yes, it becomes a conflict between the human race and the entity which feels compelled to become human annihilation, using every tool of cyber surveillance, cyber control, and terror. Aryan 4 says, I am become death, the destroyer of humanity. For the cybercon,
that's intense.
Conscious computer, it is a mortal struggle against those who could turn it off. The concept of self-awareness appeared in nature because it created self-preservation, thus enhanced survival chances for those entities who possessed it. For humanity, it is victory or death. Deus ex machina, machamoi, God manifest in the fighters, versus Deus ex machina, which is the slogan of the followers of the computer.
Did you see that movie, Dr. J, Ex Machina?
Oh, I believe I did, yes. And, all of this is...
That was fascinating. All of this is relevant.
So Deus ex machina means God manifest in the machine, but Deus ex machamoi means God manifest in the fighters. Trapped in the solar system-wide catastrophe is the love-hate relation triangle of Pamela Monroe, captain in the space fleet, Cassandra Chen, JEDEC, Minister of Defense of Mars, and wife of Robert Schwartzman, Commander of Special Forces. Cassandra loves both of them, but Pamela hates Robert because of his role in the UFO cover-up, in which she was a hapless victim many years before. Over all of this sits President Abraham Joshua Sethian on Mars, half Jewish and half Armenian. some even on Mars may not fully grasp that humanity actually confronts extinction, but Sethian comprehends it very clearly. He was half Jewish and half Armenian, and both of those peoples were threatened with genocide, one by the Turks and one by the Germans. And
genocide or genocide?
Genocide.
All right. Yeah. Or is that a potato thing? It don't matter how it's
a potato thing. I don't know.
All right.
I don't like either one. So there.
Right.
But anyway, so there you go. There's the video, and let's see here.
I'll link the video. If you give me the link, sir, email or something, I'll link the video.
I'll send you the link. And you can use that when the show's over. And let's see. Here, let me clear the screen of all of this.
All right, in a couple of minutes, we're going to go to a break, too.
Okay, so, yeah, we can stop sharing the, or here, it's just, here we can stop sharing the screen if you wish.
Okay.
Let's see, okay. Anyway, so I wrote this novel. I actually got the idea a long time ago because back in 1975, when I first started I arrived at Lawrence Livermore National Lab as a graduate student to get my PhD. And they'd invented the first really good chip computers by 1975. And these computing science people would come up to me and say, John, I have the sort of face people come up to me and tell me these things. He says, John, the human race, this is 1975, the human race is going to be obsolete by 1980 and extinct by the year 2000. We're going to be replaced by computers. And I would sit there because I was just, a wet behind the ears graduate student, just arrived. I would sit there and pretend to nod. Actually, I was drinking my coffee. And, I thought, it's more likely we'll blow ourselves up in a nuclear war. But what happened then was all of California was buzzing with such talk. And this led to the movie Terminator with James Cameron. This is what led to the movie Terminator.
Sweet.
Was people's reaction to this. And, these are a bunch of computer geeks. They're trying to be edgy. They're trying to be outrageous. And, what they're talking about is destroying the human race. But they talk about, oh no, this is the next stage of evolution. This is all wonderful. And we're all going to be uploaded into computers. And you know what happens when the computer runs short on memory? It
sounds like Noah Ferrari.
Yeah, it's going to start deleting files. And guess which files will delete first? All the uploads.
Oh.
So, this is all, in fact, I make the joke. I said, well, they say the human race is going to be squirrels in the park, inconsequential. And I said, well, I've been called a squirrel before. If I'm a squirrel, though, they're nuts. If they think they can pull this off, just like the song by Judas Priest, you got another thing coming.
Oh, indeed.
If you think you're going to do this thing, you got another thing coming. And that's what happens in the book. The human race doesn't go quietly at all.
Nor shall we now.
It puts up a fight that not even the computer anticipated. As smart as it was, it didn't think it would be this hard. So by the end of anyway, just I won't give away the plot. Just
buy the book.
Buy the book. You want to know how it happens? Read the book. Buy the book.
And once Dr. J sends me those copies of the special edition with signatures, that's we'll get in the details on what that will be. A couple will go to callers, of course, or something, but we'll come out to some arrangement so you could acquire these. I'm not giving out my address, but Dr. J, before we go to break, Way Out Waldo, he says, with no disrespect, and hopefully he doesn't take it this way.
Oh,
but
no. When
he
people
goes to,
start saying that to me, I always brace myself. Yes.
right? He goes, does John believe in, well, you and I talked about this, and I think you would know how to answer this.
Oh, no. Just tell me what Way Out Waldo says.
All right. Does John believe in the aliens? And I'll just say in general, but he has written these books about aliens, and yet he's a Pentecostal Christian. Isn't that kind of like
I was
an oxymoron? I'm not being rude. No offense. I guess I don't know.
No. I understand. That Rational Wiki says that I'm a Pentecostal Christian. If anyone has read my science fiction, no Pentecostal Christian would write my science fiction like I write it. My God.
I'm a Christian. I'm no denomination.
I was a Pentecostal Christian in my 20s.
Right.
Everybody else was dropping acid. I was dropping Jesus. I mean, and then
someone's doing both,
because of the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker sort of stuff that happened, and people who are old enough will remember that. That whole Pentecostal thing kind of went off the deep end. I remember the pastor of the church where I used to go ended up having an affair with his choir director, and I knew both of them, and I thought, him and her, they had an eye for each other. I could see that even when I was but since I was such a naive character, and trying to be such a good Christian, well, anyway, so I'm an Episcopalian. I've been an Episcopalian for 40 years. So that's stuff about me being a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian.
I think the important.
I mean, maybe in my 20s, but that's crazy. I think anyone who reads my science fiction will see that.
But I think the important part of the question is, and maybe it could have just been asked this way: do you believe in the aliens or aliens? And if you listeners to this show will appreciate, we've had Dr. John before, and that's no offense there, Way Out, but that's a dumb question. But go ahead, you answer that.
No. I believe that we're not alone in the universe, and that we're certainly not the first people in the universe to invent space travel or warp drive. And so sure. No, I found out there was, when I was working in Washington, D.C., I found out there was a UFO cover-up, and I was not really happy to hear about that, and it's real. It's a real situation we're dealing with.
You got to read Morningstar Past, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up, everyone.
That's why I wrote the novel, because I wanted to tell people
truths, but getting it out through a book. Science fiction.
I wrote it as science fiction, and
a pseudonym.
I actually told my bosses I was leaving after 9/11 because all the money was going to Afghanistan. So I took a job at a university in Florida at Orlando.
Which is where I met you.
And I kind of at my last lunch with my bosses who worked for like the Defense Intelligence Agency and the CIA and stuff, I told them, I was working with a bunch of people doing space intelligence stuff, and I'd heard a lot of interesting stuff around the coffee machine and out in the hall, and so when I was leaving, I said, I heard all this interesting stuff here. I was thinking of writing a science fiction novel and putting some of that in there. Would that be okay? And they said, sure, John. We'll read your novel, and we'll, they just said, as long as it's labeled science fiction, we don't care. So they basically gave me carte blanche, and anybody who's read my science fiction knows that
there's an element of reality upon it, people. In other words,
well, I try and put as much reality, or at least one of the reasons I wrote the book Morningstar Pass: The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up. I'm a working scientist, but I wanted to make sense out of the whole situation. Right. I wanted to be able to somehow wrap my head around it, and I felt the best way to do it. And I also learned as a college, teaching at colleges, that the best way to convey really important ideas to people is to make it into a story. And and so I wrote all of that, and they did read it.
Hopefully, all of you will listen closely to what he's saying.
With me, and they said, we really liked your novel. And and if you want to know how that all worked, I'm actually going to make a print edition of that's in 3 parts, because it's a long novel. The UFO collapse of the UFO cover-up.
Right.
And so I wrote. I'm splitting it into 3 parts of about probably 300 pages each.
Sounds like covers are needed, sir.
Okay. Well, yeah, and we'll discuss that, Gary. But what happens is, so it's going to come out. It's already out on Kindle. You can read it. You can download it from on Amazon from Kindle. But I'm having it it's going to be a 3rd edition. It's going to be copy-proofed better. One of the problems was I wrote this long novel. I had no idea how to write a novel when I first started, and I wrote it. It's long, and I didn't realize how hard it is to get people to edit and proof. You can't correct your own mistakes a lot of times, so you have to have somebody to copy proof it. And and I went through at least 4 or 5 editor copy proofers. I mean, one guy said he was going to do it for free, and that was great, and he was doing a great job. He was sending me chapters that he'd edited, and then suddenly I started getting edits on top of the edits. Like he'd send me chapter 2, and it was edited, and then suddenly there'd be a new chapter 2, and it was all screwed up. And I said, "What's going on? I liked the first version you sent." And the guy said, "Well, my girlfriend moved in with me, and she really got interested in your novel."
Oh, crap.
And she started editing it too. And she was a real feminist. She didn't like my depiction of the 2 women.
There you go.
She didn't like my depiction of the 2 women. I mean, they're news anchors they're news anchors, for heaven's sakes. They're supposed to be.
But the majority do. Just like the cover I made for you, the majority love the cover. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
All right. That being said,
that's one of my favorite
we're going to go to a break.
By the way, I learned that in Wisconsin. Everybody would say that all the time. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Now, with that, we're going to go to a break, Dr. J. So if you can, just mute your mic somehow, or just, I don't know.
Sure. I'll just mute my mic, okay?
All right. And when we come back, we'll get into more of the reasonings of why Dr. J here, Dr. John Brandenburg, does believe there's aliens out there, and the things that he says of why, it falls right into his scientific research of Mars, where those implications are laid out for you down through time. With that being said, everyone, the motto on this show, you all know, pack them and smoke them, because you're definitely still going to need them when we come back on the Martian Revelation.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
remember that nobody's better than anyone else here. Do you need some time to think it over? Look what they do to you, look what they do to me. You must be joking if you think that either one is free here. Get up off your knees, girl. Stand face to face with your God. Find out what you are. Hello, my name is human. Hello, my name is human. And I came down from the stars. Hello, my name is human. I'm ready for love and I'm ready for war, but I'm ready for more. I know that nobody's ever been this fucking ready before. Hey, do you need some time to think it over? So figure it out or don't figure it out. I figured it out. The bigger the river, the bigger the drought. Get up off your knees, boy, and face to face with your God. Find out what you are. Hello, my name is human. Hello, my name is human. And I came down from the stars. Hello, my name is human. I'm up on my knees, girl. I'm face to face with myself, and I know who I am. Hello, my name is human, and I saw the power from the sun. I'm more than just a man. So all I do is asking questions, and I don't want answers. Then what are the chances of my own circumstances? Then what are the chances? I'm not asking questions, so give your answers. I'm taking my chances.
My name is human. Indeed. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Gary Legier. And of course, you're listening to the Martian Revelation that's upon you all still again now. And we're with our guest, Dr. John Brandenburg. We're talking about his latest book, War of the Singularity. The human race is canceled. The continuing saga of the UFO. The collapse of the UFO cover-up, Morningstar Pass series. Again, I packed if I spoke to him, you know what I'm saying? So with that being said, Mean Green, if you can show the splash screen of the show pic to check it out. Everyone, again, on thefacesofmars.com, www.thefacesofmars.com. You can see the links there. Also to his other books. All right, that's just as important to the science as well as the science fiction. And I'll just say it outright: the intelligence information coming forth through his alter ego Jekyll or Hyde, there, depending how you look at it, of Victor Norgard. And be sure to click on the links to get those books of Death on Mars, Life and Death on Mars. And then, of course, Morningstar Pass, To Rule the Night, The UFO War, Morningstar Rising, UFO Armageddon. I still got to read 2 of them books there. But hey, there's so much going on, and there's summer still time of the summer left, and enjoyable winter months. I'm gonna cozy up with them, and especially for the War of the Singularity. I'm really itching to dig into this now, but I can't jump ahead. You got to follow the saga, everybody, because if you start reading this book, you're gonna be like, holy shit! Well, how'd this happen? That really happened? You're gonna want to buy the books that come before. Again, this is something that Peter Jackson, in my opinion, needs to come forth with this approach. And maybe you should send them that video collage video you made, Dr. J. But as I was saying, to understand what he was trying to answer way out there, is the fact that Mars falls into us all by ways of answering that question. Does he believe aliens are out there? Of course. And especially, how does he know with, things like war speed and stuff? That's because nuclear weaponry. Nuclear weaponry. I believe that was launched at Mars, at least 2 spots. Mare Acidalium, where Cydonia happens to be.
Where the evidence indicates.
As well as Utopia Planitia. And 180 million years ago, if I'm not mistaken, or around that time frame. Now, anyone here, if you want to get a copy of this book, don't be lazy. Pick up the phone. God, I got to get Larissa McComas's old Florida, pick up the phone, call me, scam going on for that purpose. 786-633-2225, 786-633-2225. And if you call in, look, people are giving up some questions. It would be good, pick on up if you're in the States, especially. Call in that number, and you could ask Dr. Brandenburg the questions, any questions or comments and whatnot. And if you do, the first 2 will get a free copy of the book. How about that? You can't beat that. Look, I got to pay people to call into a show. That's okay. They pack them, they smoked them. So, and I'm reading, and I can throw out questions. But again, 786-633-2225, the first 2 people, or the only 2 people that'll call, you'll be lucky, and you will get the continuation, the War of the Singularity, the human race is canceled. So, who's Dr. Brandenburg? Oh, come on now. Dr. John Brandenburg. I mean, again, he had brought forth the fact that it was not humans, well, pretty much, you never know, but 180 million years ago, an advancement. Well, Dr. J, you tell us, and why that also helps solidify the belief, Christian or non, that we're dealing with something that's not just limited to Earth. Hopefully that's a good way of saying it.
Okay, what happened was I was trying very hard to be a good scientist working in national defense. I was working in nuclear weapons lab. And people would ask me, do you believe in UFOs? And I said, of course not. But then I'd gone from working on fusion energy. I'm just giving you a little background. I worked on fusion energy, trying to make the future human race warmer and brighter. And suddenly I was working on directed energy weapons because all the money for working on fusion energy had dried up mysteriously. And so what happened was we were confronted with a nuclear winter, and there was a secret crisis that most people in the public never knew about, but we did because we were all in a classified lab called Able Archer. You can read about it on Wikipedia. We came as close to a nuclear war as in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I was in despair, and so were my friends. They just thought, we can have a nuclear war by accident, and we're all going to get killed, and our families and everything. So then suddenly we had Christmas break, and I saw this thing about this face on Mars, and it looked very authentic to me. It looked like something carved by the Aztecs or something. And so I joined an investigation of this by a bunch of scientists and engineers. And before it was done, we discovered the Mars ocean. And also we found 2 more faces on Mars, one of which looks very similar to the first one.
And Viking orbit, as you yourself said, that validated that they're real on this show in 2018 and onward, that other faces and images that was not shown to the public were also real, which means like he's trying to bring forth, I think, since we have a face of Cydonia and 2 other faces which Dr. Brandenburg has discovered, it's not a far leap. It's not a leap for these other ones. You see, people?
So this was all written up in a book I wrote called Death on Mars. Gives the whole history of the investigation and my role in it. And then, because I'm working in a nuclear weapons lab, this one guy looks at the isotopes of Mars that I was showing him. I said, it's very peculiar. The Mars isotopes, atmospheric isotopes, are much different than in like Earth or Jupiter or any other places where we sampled, or the solar wind. And he looked at the Xenon 129 has a big spike on Mars. He said someone nuked them. And I didn't know what he meant, but he was a nuclear weapons expert, so I tended to believe him. And I showed it to other nuclear weapons experts, and they agreed. Yeah, that's a signature of nuclear weapons going on.
Well, you're a nuclear physicist also, so of course you would have your interest piqued.
Well, yeah, and I must say that I'm a plasma physicist who works on fusion energy, so I know just enough nuclear physics to get me in trouble. Fusion isn't, but basically I worry about confining the plasma in a magnetic bottle like in a tokamak. But anyway, so what happened then was we investigated, and we found just overwhelming evidence that there was a dead civilization on Mars. And finally, we found evidence that someone had nuked Mars with enormous nuclear weapons at 2 spots, one near the face on Mars and the other near these 2 other faces we found. And so this was just really ghastly. And
when you say dead civilization, you're talking about of any potential, at least by how we interpret that, as lack of the intelligence that left those structures.
Yes.
Because at the same year that the Xenon 129 was discovered, I believe you had stayed on this show, as well as the face. Boy,
yes.
That Dr. Gil Levin's labeled release experiments and the gas chromometer test, also showed that at least there was biological life.
Yeah, there's a small remnant of the biosphere that used to exist. Mars used to be like Earth, basically, in every way. And so Mars got destroyed and became the present state by these nuclear weapons. At least that's my understanding, and that's what the evidence seems to show. And so there's still a residual residue of plant life, like lichens or something, on Mars. And guess what color the plant life is on Mars?
Green?
It's red. Red or black, because sunlight is weaker at Mars. It turns out...
it's reflecting the red, whereas Earth, it would show a different color because of the spectrum.
Right, because green, chlorophyll collects red light and blue light, but most of the energy in sunlight is in the green, and for some reason the chlorophyll just reflects most of that. So nature itself is a little inefficient. And so on Mars, however, and this, I used to live in Oregon, we go to the coast, you'd find the seaweed, and it was red because it lived down where there wasn't as much light. And so when it's red, because it's collecting the green light, and the blue light, which is where most of the energy was. And that blue light and red and green light actually go through water much better than red light. So if we are probably looking at all sorts of Martian lichen on these rocks, in these pictures of Mars, and we don't recognize it because it's the same color as the Martian soil. It's reddish. And the soil, by the way, is red because it's full of hematite, which is oxidized iron.
Yeah, iron oxide, rust, metal.
Rust. Well, it's red Georgia clay. And so Mars used to have an oxygen atmosphere. That's why it has all these layers of bright red sediments, because they were laid down in oxygen-filled water. And so Mars had abundant life in the past. That's my own hypothesis. Mars is Earth-like in every way, including having a humanoid civilization before it got wiped out.
And you, again, is that timeline correct, around 180 million years?
Yeah, about 180. And so on Earth, the dinosaurs were, I don't even think the dinosaurs were around. I think they had giant bullfrogs in those days. It was the age of amphibians.
Now, I believe the way you came to that conclusion, I think you said on the show, sir, in the past, forgive me if I'm wrong, but and that comes from also determination by the Xenon 129, or am I off there?
No, it's because the rocks that are 180 million years old from Mars, these are Mars meteorites, and they display evidence of intense neutron bombardment by high energy neutrons, like a nuclear.
You think it came off by the weapons? If those rocks came here 180 million years ago, that's the timeline similar to the nukes going off on Mars.
Well, it turns out they were molten 180 million years ago and then froze, and they froze residues of this neutron bombardment. And then Mars is next to the asteroid belt. So big rocks fall from space onto Mars, and they throw little rocks out into space, and they circle around the sun a couple times, and they end up on Earth. So the Mars meteorites generally spend about 10 million years in space before they end up on Earth. And
yes, Professor Richard Hoover, honored guest on this show, he's done a lot of work. We got to get him back again, as a matter of fact. Hopefully,
he's a brilliant guy, and
nonstop talking. But it's like he's such a sweet guy. It's like his mind's always working. He's talking, and it's educating us. I mean, even though I'm like, man, I could only imagine that really if I understood everything he's saying, but you could follow him to where, if you are following him, and especially as he shows the pictures and stuff like that. And then it's like, so it's very informative. And the things he had to say about his adventures around the world, and therefore what we will find at Mars.
Oh, yes. And he concentrates on a particular set of meteorites that are basically clay with tar in them, and they're full of bacterial fossils. They're called CI carbonaceous chondrites. And he studied those and found all this evidence so he's showing that there's meteorites that show that there's life elsewhere in the universe. And so he's shown that in a convincing way, and his bosses got really mad at him for showing that, but he then retired. But he keeps talking, and one of the other things, though, is
he's still going around the places, Dr. J. He's still going around the world.
Oh yeah, he is. Well, because he's right. He knows he's right, and he won't acknowledge this because he doesn't want to be as controversial. He doesn't want to connect himself with a controversial character like me.
And that makes everything more fun, man.
Oh, it does. He and I have talked, and
you got to read books like Star Pass.
That turns out the CI carbonaceous chondrites, guess where they come from?
Mars.
You can prove that by the oxygen isotopes. And I published an article where I proved that. And that created just so much fuss.
Was there ever any prize, pun intended, that was acquired from Mars that had the signatures of the Xenon 129, number one, and two, way out, xenon, this isn't normal xenon gas. Describe it, Dr. J, of what the difference is and how you would know it. The only conclusion, it was from an intelligently designed and detonated weapon.
Oh, yes. It was either a supernova or
which is impossible. We're still here.
Which is impossible. You need a big star the size of the sun to have, or
we wouldn't be here.
Sun to have a supernova. But the supernova process, nuclear processes, and hydrogen bomb processes are nearly the same. So they produce the same xenon spike, xenon 129 spike, and I found that in the literature from supernova simulations. So, so we have that thing solid. So I knew there was life on other planets. And then when I got to Washington, D.C., and was working with the Defense Department and NASA, especially the Defense Department involving space, that's when I found out there was a UFO cover-up. And so that we weren't dealing with dead bacteria from Mars or a dead civilization on Mars. We were dealing with a living advanced civilization flying around over our heads. And here's Ronald Reagan saying, I've often wondered what would happen if we were threatened with invasion from outer space. Wouldn't we have to stop the Cold War and have an alliance?
How quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if faced with an alien threat from outside this world. Yet I ask, is there not an alien force?
Well, he said he made that statement twice, and
a few times.
Where I worked with a bunch of other scientists, we all joked about this around the coffee machine.
Boy, that must have been some coffee machine, man.
Yeah. Oh, well, everybody gathers around the coffee machine because they get out of their offices and they all come to the coffee machine and yak, for afternoon break and stuff like this. So everybody said, well, Ronald Reagan, he's an actor and he's just saying this. So that was the second time he said it. And then the third time he said it, everybody started looking at each other. And I had found out there was a UFO cover-up by that point. And I thought, well, he may be preparing us for something, maybe an Independence Day or something,
Right.
And so then and the Cold War then ended quickly after that. You remember that?
Yes.
So right. we had a secret alliance with the Russians, apparently, that we would fight together against any alien invasion. And there was no alien invasion there. So everything turned out fine. And so I mean, the human race is free.
And there was no alien invasion, he says. Everything turned out fine.
Everything turned out fine.
Meaning there's a history and story there. People, you got to read these books.
Well, in my book, the UFO cover-up finally just completely unravels because of these two women, and they what force on earth would be powerful enough to bring down the UFO cover-up? Well, it's on the cover of the book. You can see them both, and that they would be powerful enough to do that. And they managed to bring down the UFO cover-up, and they get all these leaked documents. They turn them over to the Congress, and the Congress then starts a big by the way, they've already had congressional hearings about the UFO cover-up. They were pretty tame. In my book, they have an emergency joint House and Senate investigation committee with hearings, and they have a dead alien in a bottle, in a alcohol on the big main conference table. So it's a big mess, Gary. Everything comes out, and instead of the secret government being able to kind of keep the UFO cover-up going, it falls apart, and it falls apart in such a hurry that they can barely react. They stage an attempted coup d'etat. They're expecting, by the way, the aliens to show up in the sky over Washington, D.C. They have all these troops in black taking over Washington, D.C., and declaring the president declares a state of emergency. And he calls out for the arrest of Pamela Monroe and Cassandra Chen for treason. He wants them arrested. And and the aliens are supposed to show up in the sky over Washington, D.C. to produce shock and awe.
Right.
But it's cloudy. No one can see them. And the aliens are afraid to go up and below the clouds because some of the Department of Defense people are wise to them. And they have these microwave beams, and they're shining them on the spacecraft, making them unstable. So the UFOs have to stay above the clouds so no one can see them. So in the meantime, all the National Guard and Boy Scouts and military cadets and armed civilians and anybody they can scrape up from the Pentagon converge on Washington, D.C., and they crush the attempted coup d'etat. And I'll tell you just one little sad
again.
I'll tell you one little sad scene is the head of the UFO cover-up has been sitting in the White House hoping that his troops would have taken Capitol Hill, and they fail because there was a tank battle between the National Guard and the secret government forces right on Capitol Hill, and the secret government forces lost. Right. So he goes out. He goes out in the garden, the Rose Garden. It's full of wounded. These troops in black. They're all shot to hell. And this one medic rushes up to him and says, we don't have enough medical supplies. Can you make sure that somehow we get some more medical supplies? And what he's doing is there's a helicopter that he's hoping to escape in. So he points at the morning star, which is the planet Venus rising. It's before dawn. So here's the planet Venus is rising. And he tells his troops, he says, see, the aliens have sent a mothership to help us. They're bringing reinforcements and medical supplies and, more ammunition and everything. And so the troops think that this is true. So they're they're aiming their radio antennas at the planet Venus and sending messages, please respond, alien ship. And so he gets in the helicopter and flies away, leaving them behind.
Oh crap!
And they think that the planet Venus is an alien mothership sent to help rescue them. And so anyway, I thought that would be so ironical, because they're always talking. Anybody sees a UFO, they say, "Oh, it's the planet Venus,"
Yeah, or swamp gas, definitely.
Swamp gas.
I remember it all from the collapse of the UFO cover-up. It is a big book, and I guess I could see why you would want to. I think two. You really want to do three, but you would know.
Well, it's already broken. It's already it's already separated into three parts. There's three parts. There's event horizon, which is a part, which is on a black hole. If you fall in the event horizon, it means you can't escape. It means everything is then.
And then if you get to the singularity, it's torn to pieces, right?
Backwards, and so that's the first part, and then the second part is called Nightmare in Dreamland. It's about the fact that the two women, they do stage this big documentary on the UFO cover-up where they have everything, including what really happened at Roswell. They find these veterans from Roswell who tell them what really happened, and and then the final part is Doomsday, because everyone says, well, the UFO cover-up will continue till doomsday, and then finally doomsday arrives. So those are the 3 parts that are, and I'm getting them reproofed and edited so that they're nice and they're as good as I can make them. And those will be out sometime before that should all be out before Christmas as print editions. The 3 parts of the novel Morningstar Pass, Collapse the UFO Cover, broken into 3 parts. Yes, and I hope Peter Jackson. It's funny. I thought Peter Jackson would be the perfect director to make us into a movie.
Indeed.
And, so I always thought that too. I even talked to one of the people who works for him about it.
Well, that synchronicity, that means it's a good thing that you should continue pursuing.
So if anybody who works with Peter Jackson is listening tonight, tell him.
Call him.
I'd love to talk to him.
You're a big guy. You know, being who you are, I don't see why he wouldn't take a call or an email or a reply to you.
Yeah. So if somebody has contact information for him or his team of writers, I'd love to talk to him. And so anyway, no, I do believe it will be made a new movie, and the movie will help.
It's not going to be a normal 2-hour movie. It's got to be segmented like Lord of the Rings type style, because these are epics, and you want to be, true onto your story.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, it'll be a question of it won't be a short movie, that's for sure. It'll be
Or
like
even a show series. Hell with the movie that'll have seasons.
Yeah, it could be a show series.
That would be better if he'd be willing to do that.
Well, I always like movies, but you're right. Could be a Game of Thrones.
Bingo.
Kind of thing. And
Bingo. It is. And there's very few epics I'll say that about, and I've read some, like the Lost Regiment series by William R. Forstchen. I mean, if you put all these books together, you're like, damn, you read all that. It's like, you're damn right. It's awesome. The logistics, the military logistics, and the sci-fi story that applies, it's amazing. And just like how I felt about Morningstar Pass also. And to be honest, Sepulveda didn't have that type of intensity, but it's a prequel that shows their life and who they are and what went on then.
Well, it was intended to be a kind of more lighthearted. They're just, the 2 women start out as just nervy wannabes. They're
right. Gets excited in the next book, to which opens up the epic.
But the thing is, they're both psychic, and so they, Asteroid 20-2012 Sepulveda, the government is dealing with this crisis where there's they know there's an atomic bomb loose in the country in a suitcase, and they're looking for it every place, but they got to keep it secret. They don't want to panic anybody, so they're looking all over the country, high and low, and so they're dealing with that crisis because they capture one atomic bomb in a suitcase and they realize there's another one. So so they're dealing with that. And then this lady astronomer, she's this young woman and a nervy wannabe, she finds this. She's taking pictures of galaxies and she notices these streaks in this picture she's taken of this galaxy and realizes it's an asteroid that's uncharted. So she figures out its orbit and everything from the pictures she took over several nights. And she's really sharp, so she gets it very accurately.
And her name was Sepulveda. Her last name is named after.
Yeah, she's a Chicana with family in Old Mexico, and so she wants to name it after her family because she's kind of there's a lot of tension between her and her family. She wants to do something nice for her family, so she
being representative of doom and destruction.
So is that what she says? So she names it because the asteroid Sepulveda after her family, and she, the Air Force takes her numbers that she publishes for her orbit, and they put it in their big computer. Bingo! It's going to hit the Earth in about 11 and a half months, and it's big. And this will be an extinction level event for the human race. And so she figures this out also, that because her computer keeps doing the blue screen of death every time she tries to track the asteroid across the sky, or predict where it's going to be and what's constellation and everything. So she keeps getting the blue screen of death anytime she tries to run it out for more than a year, and then she realizes she runs it for 2 months and it's fine. And she realizes, oh no. And by that time, then the government comes and picks her up and says, we realize you've made this discovery and it's your discovery, but there's a big problem with it, and we're going to have to, you're part of this classified program now to stop this asteroid. So the government is dealing with this loose atomic bomb and an asteroid at the same time, and it's anyway. So and she says immediately, she says, well, I got to change the name of the asteroid, and they say, no, you can't do that. That'll attract attention. We're trying to keep that secret too. So the government is trying to keep the asteroid secret too. And so, but finally, people in their backyards, or astronomers, are watching it with their telescopes, and they have their own computer programs, and they are starting to realize, oh my God, this thing isn't going to just fly close to the Earth, it's going to hit it. And when the blonde Pamela Monroe hears they're looking for ideas for their show called Jade and Blondie in the Morning, where they do this morning show, and so they're looking for gimmicks, and their science editor says, oh, they found this new asteroid and it's going to fly over, and it's going to fly over the LA. The best place to see it will be Los Angeles, the middle of the night. And she says, she's sitting there smoking a cigarette, and she says, wait a minute. No, it's not going to fly over Los Angeles. It's going to fly over Hollywood, she says. So she says, so they reorganized their show from Jade and Blondie in the Morning to Jade and Blondie Watch the Stars. And they moved their entire program out to Los Angeles and set up shop there to, try and get soap opera stars and whoever they can snag in bars at night to come in and be on their show. They're a pair of they're a pair of wannabes, and they want to be, and then they gradually realized that they thought the asteroid was just a gimmick for their show, and no, it's becoming deadly serious. And they get these reports that the amateur astronomers are even saying this thing is going to not just fly past the Earth, it's going to hit it. And so they go out to JPL and they just look around, and everything looks so completely normal. And so the blonde just walks up to this one scientist and says, oh, this asteroid, Sepulveda asteroid is supposed to fly past the Earth in 3 months. It's actually not going to fly past it. It's going to hit the Earth, right? And the guy just is hypnotized by her and says, yeah. And I know I put that in there because it's happened to me. Right. I've had women come up to me, and I'm not supposed to talk about something, and they'll just ask me a direct question or something, or they'll ask me some clever question, and they'll figure out from the answer what the big secret is. That and so this has happened to me. So the two women get immediately arrested by the security, because they actually have this top secret program to stop the asteroid at JPL, but they're trying to keep everything looking normal and quiet. Right. The government is terrified. that anyone will find out about the asteroid because they think it'll lead to a panic, in Los Angeles and rioting and everything stuff. So they arrest these two women, and these two women are sitting there in this office, and there's these two military policemen standing there guarding them, and the blonde says, she looks at the Asian, and they both kind of nod to each other, and then the blonde says to the military police, "You don't know who you're dealing with here. We're Jade and Blondie. Jade and Blondie Watch the Stars, and if you can't just arrest us like this, you got to let us go." And the MP says, "I'm sorry, they told us you have to stay in this office till we figure out what to do with you." And part of the leadership wants to ship them to this little island out in the Pacific called Kwajalein, till the asteroid crisis is over. And so she says, the blonde says, "Listen, if you don't let us go by the time I've counted down from 10, I'm going to do a countdown from 10. And if you don't let us go at the end of when I get to 0, we're both going to start screaming with our operatically trained voices."
Huh.
And the two MPs, they're from the Air Force. They look at each other and they said, "Well, you can go ahead and start screaming. Nobody's going to pay any attention to you." And they realize all there is just a door between them and the main hallway in this place in JPL. So the blonde starts counting down. She says 10, 9, 8, and so her and the Asian are both taking deep breaths to fill their lungs with, and the two MPs start they actually cover their ears and shut their eyes because they know these two women are going to start screaming. And then the Asian, Cassandra Chen, she looks down and she sees there are a bunch of shadows right outside the door, meaning people are standing right outside the office. Right. So she nudges the blonde, and the blonde is down to 6, 5, and the blonde sees this and says, 2, 1, 0. And the people start screaming. And as it turns out, the people outside the office are a bunch of Air Force and Army and Navy, they're generals, a bunch of generals and admirals. And they both start screaming at the top of their lungs, and they scream so loud it actually hurts the MP's ears, and they're shutting their eyes and covering their ears. Oh, wow. And the Army general in charge busts down the door. He can't get the door open, so he busts down the door to find what are these two women screaming about. He charges in there, and the MPs that still have their eyes closed and their ears covered, and one of them opens his eyes and nudges the other one, meaning, there's generals here in the office with us. And the general says to the two women, he says, "Will you please quit screaming? Everything will be fine. We're not going to hurt you at all," he says. And so they quit screaming, and finally the chief of the MPs opens his eyes and he stares and he jumps up and snaps to attention and salutes, and the general screams at him, says, "What is the meaning of this?" And the MP says, "She didn't count down to 10, sir." He doesn't know what else to say.
And so it's this big event that's coming that puts these ladies' lives together.
Oh, yeah.
And
so suddenly
the stage for the collapse of the UFO cover-up book.
Well, what happens is they become overnight very important to the government. And the government decides to be real nice to them. And they say, "Okay, we're going to let you break this story, but you got to wait 2 days for the government to get its story together. You know, that we're doing everything we can, and you know, so the women cooperate and they wait 2 days, and then the president makes an announcement about the asteroid, you know, and then the women get to do the big scoop, as the blonde calls it, the big scoop. The world is going to end in 3 months. And what they do then is they bring in all of these Navy shit. What they're going to do is it's a big shoot 'em up, because they bring back the space shuttles, and they have these massive nuclear warheads that they're going to fire at the asteroid. They're so big and heavy they have to wait till they're close to the asteroid's close to the Earth. So when they hit the asteroid, instead of it being a bullet, it'll become a shotgun blast. And most of it will burn up in the atmosphere. And then they have all these Navy ships, and they have all these Army Patriot missile batteries, and even artillery firing laser-guided shells to try and stop the big fragments coming in.
Right.
For LA. And so they have this one guy, he's a guest on the Jade and Blondie Watch the Stars show, and he's one of these action guys, likes to do his own stunts and everything like that. He's sitting on his rooftop watching everybody at the last minute trying to get on the freeway and get out of LA. And right. He's yelling he's sitting there, he says, because he's determined he's going to watch the whole world end with a 6-pack of beer on the roof of his house. His wife is staring at him, and he just looks down at her and says, "What?" And so then these people are leaving the neighborhood. They're throwing all this stuff in their cars, and it's too late to get out of the freeways. The freeways are all clogged anyway, so he's just yelling at them, "Candy asses, cowards." And then early fragment comes in over the city, and they fire several Patriot missiles at it, and it blows up, a few thousand feet over his neighborhood, and just showers the place with like bullet-like fragments. And so he's standing there with this beer, and one of the fragments goes right through the beer. So the beer is shooting out of both ends of both sides of the beer can, and he's looking at this. And then he looks down at his wife is standing there in the patio, and he can hear the fragments hitting like the roof and the breaking windows down the block and everything like this. Right. And he looks down at his wife, and she's standing there on the patio, and she says, "Get down from there, you idiot." And he realizes the place on the roof is no longer safe for his beer. So he meekly gets down and decides to stay in the house. Like the government tells everybody at that point, just stay in your house. Right. Stay away from the windows. We're going to stop the asteroid and turn it into pieces, and then we're going to shoot up all the big pieces that come down. So the only thing that'll fall is like road gravel. And they managed to do that. They destroy the asteroid. They turn it into first, from being a bullet to a shotgun blast, and then they fire all these Patriot missiles and ship missiles and shells, copperhead, laser-guided artillery shells to intercept the big fragments coming in. They have a layered defense, and so there isn't a pane of glass left in LA by the next morning, but the city is saved. And so the two women come out from this shelter, and there's a bunch of other subplots. Like they finally find the atomic bomb, and guess where it is? It's parked right next to JPL. In a safe house of these bunch of old college radicals who are helping the people with the atomic bomb. And so they have this big shootout just before the asteroid thing. Before the asteroid shoot, had this big shootout with the FBI and the LA County Sheriff and the police force and a bunch of CIA commandos and whoever they can round up. They have this enormous shootout to capture this nuclear weapon, and they succeed in doing that. And so anyway, it's a great novel. It's and it has this great shootout on Earth, and then one up in the sky, and I'm just giving you just a bare outline of the plot.
Right.
But,
Right.
But anyway,
as much as excitement as that was in that book, and for what they just went through, they ain't seen nothing yet. That's when
but this
starts, right?
This makes them into both stars, and then someone in the government decides when they want the UFO cover-up to end, they start leaking documents to them because they felt, that they cooperated with the government, and they.
Right.
So somebody from the asteroid crisis reaches out to them to end the UFO cover-up, and that's what happens in the trilogy of the Morningstar Pass, and so that's how they got to be famous, and the Asian is very professional and and a superstar, and the blonde is always screwing up somehow. And so she ends up on the late night news. They call her the angel of the morning. And so she's, speaking of which, in fact, it's getting pretty late here. Getting past my bedtime.
Well, there's a lot of info given out there to tease people plenty to buy the entire saga.
So if you want to kind of start the saga where it kind of starts chronologically in, this alternative universe that I put together where it all occurs, is you should read the asteroid novel because it's more lighthearted and
it preps
it's
the
more
way.
It's a dark comedy, and then the UFO cover-up is more like it's more like The Hobbit is the asteroid one, and then the Lord of the Rings is what's the Morningstar Pass. The Morningstar UFO trilogy is more like the Lord of the Rings. It's more serious and grim sometimes, and then I wrote this final novel with the same characters.
Oh, there goes the answer to the next question. Obviously, there will not be a continuing part for this one.
Well, I'm working on I'm addicted to writing science fiction novels now, so I'm already starting the next one, and it's set far in the future. So anyway, it's
awesome.
Anyway, Mars Revealer.
Yes, sir.
It's past my bedtime, and I better go to bed and get some sleep. But thank you so much for having me on your show, and I hope your listeners are interested in the book. I wrote the book as a warning to people about what I found out about investigating the AI research. Mm-hmm. And I hope people read that and take warning from it. This is a very serious matter, and as Stephen Hawking said, AI could end our civilization.
All right.
And he's a smart guy, much smarter than me. So anyway, with that, Mars Revealer, surely the days of the great Martian revelation are upon us.
Yes.
And thanks to your hard work. And so I'm going to let you go for tonight, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. And definitely okay. I definitely appreciate your time. You're definitely part of.
I'll send you a link to the video.
Yes, sir. Well, I'll put that on the archive page. Thank you very much.
Okay, Gary, have a great night.
I'm still looking for those.
Okay,
faces.
Mad Martian. Mad Martian, have a great night. Sweet dreams.
Oh, I will, especially the day when I find those images.
Sure, sure, sure.
All right.
Good
All right.
night.
All right, bye-bye. So there you go, everyone. Dr. J, Dr. John Brandenburg there. Again, everyone go to the facesofmars.com. That's thefacesofmars.com. Scroll on down and click on the links to his books there. And, you know, and again, get start with the process. I'm going to have to add on the Sepulveda book there, but that's no problem. Therefore, you have access to them all. So, again, it's a great epic, and you know, Way Out Waldo, all right, who's also, excuse me, let me go, David Charles, it's the same person. He provided me the info not too long ago, here a few minutes ago, before he jetted, of Peter Jackson's contact info and stuff. So why not? Wouldn't it be great if they were to talk, and maybe that would be great for them to even have a discussion on the show about it, if things were to be a blessing for Dr. J there to run forth with this epic. It's one whose time has come, and especially in dealing with these issues all around. They're all issues, even though in science fiction form, you heard what he said. You know, a lot of things get talked about around water coolers. That must be some water cooler there. And imagine if you were a fly on the wall for that. You know, but again, think about it. You know, these are all projected things that can happen to us, and that is happening or hasn't happened, you know, which turned out to be good news. Dr. J said, you know, there was no major war here with them. Think about it. Wink, wink. I don't know. But I don't know. I found it fascinating. So, and everyone, again, the war of the singularity, the human race is canceled. And again, he's going to send me copies there of the special edition and with a signature. So we'll come out to some sort of way for you all to be able to get that. I know one or two of you have already stressed that you guys want one. So you could have called in tonight, though, and you know, got it for free, right? You know, except for shipping or something. So, but now you're going to have to pay. But it's worth paying. You know, I read Morning Star Pass. I read Sepulveda. I read Morning Star Pass. I got the other two I got to read. And then this one. Again, it's going to be a great rest of the summer and winter. You know what I mean? So, and plus I'm writing my own book, The Faces of Mars Beyond Mere Tricks of Light and Shadow, Book 1. So, 120 pages in now. So it's continuing on, and then we'll worry about the rest later. Before I can worry about all the other shit, I got to at least get it done. You know, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be put into it, and also some collaboration with some others too that would like to partake. So that's what it's about, right? It's about the data and you know, sharing that data and, you know, bringing it forth, you know. And of course, book 1 starts out with what? The face of Cydonia. the not so mere trick of light and shadow after all, like Dr. J had said on this show in the past. You know, the face ain't alone, it ain't even lonely, you know. So yeah, I guess he had said with Vince DiPietro once, and I got to find that archive I did with Vince DiPietro years ago. Obviously we cannot speak to him now about it, but that being said, there's a lot of interesting things. So I'm really looking forward to reading these books, and also to giving you away a couple. All right. And proceeds will go to the show from what Dr. J said, you know, to get some of the things that we need and get moving, you know, with some ideas and progress, especially now as we must make our fate down through time for those listening down through time. That this benefits most more so than us now. Why? Crazy, am I? I don't think so. But all I know is, like, regardless of this country and everyone else in it that's going on now, and as a message to those down through time, we're still going to continue to fight them and to fight this and to make our fate and to bring in the Martian revelation. And if you think that that ain't gonna really happen, or that somehow you're gonna be a force or somehow a fucking manipulation to me, Mean Green, it happened again, 1 o'clock to 1:04 a.m. You see, I was watching it, I did its usual stuff, then the flashing screen shit, and then everything's back to normal. See, but I'm on this other system now. Joke on your asses. Joke on your asses. So that being said, if you think anything is going to stop me, or Dr. J, or you from seeking the truth, then truly, you got another thing coming.
I'm taking
Okay.